Welcome. City Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Thank you. I was having a problem unmuting. Alderman Suffredin.
Here.
Alderman Ravel.
Here.
Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Fleming.
Here.
Alderman Fisk.
Here.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Here.
Alderman Nguyen.
Here.
Alderman Wilson.
Here.
And Alderman Drew Simmons.
Here.
All right. Thank you, Clerk. We have quorum today, and we have all of our aldermen here. For the record, Clerk, I have roll call tonight beginning with Alderman Rainey on that.
I didn't have it in front of me, so I just started with someone.
No worries. Okay, Alderman Wilson, could you please make a motion to suspend the rules for remote participation?
I move that we suspend the rules to allow us to conduct the meeting using the Zoom software in lieu of a in-person meeting, and also in accordance with the governor's prior directives with regard to COVID-19.
Second.
All right. Seeing no discussion, City Clerk, could you please take the roll on that motion for a remote meeting?
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Drew Simmons.
Aye.
And Alderman Suffredin.
Aye.
All right.
Ravel.
And Alderman Ravel, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Clerk. The suspension of the rules allowing for remote participation passes on a 9-0 vote, and that's due to the pandemic and our need to meet remotely. Welcome, everybody. Today is the Monday, October 26, 2020, Evanston City Council meeting. First up, we're going to have a public hearing today before we go to what's our typical standard agenda. And that public hearing is going to be on the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget for the city of Evanston. And I'm going to ask Alderman Rainey if you would just move. Well, actually, no, I don't think I don't need. Correct me, Kelly, if I'm wrong. I don't believe I need a movement of a council member on this. I am just going to convene this. So pursuant to the Illinois complied statutes in section 1-11-5 of the city code, the Evanston City Council is conducting a public hearing today to consider the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget document. The purpose of this hearing is to allow for public input on the proposed budget document. Staff has presented an overview of the 2021 proposed budget on October 19th, 2020, and this presentation, along with the proposed budget, is available at thecityofevanston.org/government/budget. I hereby convene the hearing for the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget presentation. I convene it to be open. So we're now going to hold this hearing. I have 4 individuals that have signed up for this public hearing to speak tonight and share their perspective. The first speaker is Mike Vasilko. Then we will have Ray Friedman. I've got the first name Jamie. I didn't see a last name on the sign-in, but it may be Robin. That was the last email. The email address had Jamie Robin in it, and then Sean Peck Collier. Luke, please let me know if anyone else signs up for this public hearing before I close it. First up then is Mike Vasilko. Welcome, Mike.
I believe Mike is not available at this moment.
Okay, then let's go to our second. We'll come back to him at the end if he's back with us. Do we have Ray Friedman?
Hello, this is Ray speaking.
Welcome, Ray.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First, I'm a little bit confused about the public hearing. And is this a discussion? And will our comments be addressed during or after this hearing? So that was the first thing I had in mind. I see you made it a point to put that ad in the Tribune. I guess it's required by law. My question is, why wasn't it mentioned at last week's City Council meeting or 2 weeks ago at City Council meeting? I keep up with pretty much all events and activities, and I get emails almost every day from Evanston. Did I miss an email about this public hearing? And did we have it advertised in Evanston Now or Evanston Patch? So the last question about that was this public hearing posted anywhere else where others might have seen it? Because I see there's only 4 people signed up to speak. So now on the budget, my first question is, what is the status of City Hall at 2100 Ridge? When will we be resuming business there? Wondering how many employees did we have working there at City Hall, full and part-time? And how much money have we saved from City Hall being closed for the last 8 months or so? Also, how much money did we save not having our usual summer outdoor activities? What did you decide? Hello?
We're with you, Ray. We're with you.
Oh, good. Okay. What did you decide to do regarding James Park? Are you going to replace the gas pipes and electric pipes after we spent $8 million on the lawsuit that unfortunately we lost? What else have I got? What is the status of 1305 Pittner? We haven't talked about that in a while. We've been asking about it for a couple of years, though. Is it rented? If so, how many units? What program are they rented under, if they're rented at all? The taxpayers spent $5.5 million on this project. I think it's time we found out if it's being used or not. I also wanted to mention the 3 budget meetings with the residents for a budget discussion. And, you know, I'm really big on having a discussion, which we're sorely lacking here. It appears there were 10 to 15 residents per meeting, as it was last year, split into 3 tables after the same presentation of the pie chart at each meeting. Each meeting you asked us questions. So there was very little time for residents' questions. We probably got to speak about 5-6 minutes for each of us. And the topics that you chose for each meeting was not particularly a topic that I would have raised to talk about. I thought we were going to talk about the budget. I enjoy looking at the numbers. I'm a numbers guy. So my last question is, for now, in looking at the biweekly payroll and bills section, it appears that the biweekly payroll is approximately $2.8 million or $5.6 million per month. And the bills list is about the same, usually a bit higher, plus credit card debt. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but the total budget is $320 million, and the budget that we can control is $117 million. But after I add up the bills and payroll, it's approximately $134 million, and that's even before credit cards. So we've spent $134 million, but the budget is for $117 million. So I know that we've had a budget crisis every year. Like I said, we're really short on discussion with residents, and I think it would really help everybody that if we had these discussions and input from people about everything, any major decision that goes on in Evanston. So thank you for the time. Appreciate it. And I'll see you soon at public comment.
Thank you, Ray. Next up, we've got Jamie Robin. And If I have the last name incorrect, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Jamie Robin. I'm a taxpayer in the 6th Ward, and I'd like to address the proposed 5.9% increase in the real estate tax levy, and ask the council to consider these points that I'm going to make in its deliberations. First of all, this increase in the levy is at a time when we're still in the midst and likely to continue in terms of our economic recession, and at a time when the Social Security increase for next year is only 1.3%. If I might refer to the budget document on page 15, which covers property tax, the general fund levy and the human service fund levy are increasing by $1,050,000, which could be avoided if the city did not budget for a $1 million increase in the general fund reserve. To budget an increase in the reserve while the pandemic is still raging seems to be a bit aggressive, especially since the Fitch rating agency gave the city a AA+ stable rating on July 23rd, and the city has not maintained its targeted 16.6% reserve for the general fund reserve since 2015. So to start doing it in the midst of a continuing economic depression seems to be asking a bit much of the taxpayers. Continuing on page 15, the debt service fund, which is increasing, the levy is proposed to increase by 2.6%. I would call the council's attention to page 132, which details the operating revenue and operating expense of the debt service. And note that the estimated 2020 debt service requirement, that's the expense, is $15,840,000, and that in 2021 this will actually decrease to $15,133,666. So what has happened is that the interfund transfer, which is the transfer from the general fund, is decreasing by $2 million, so that the levy is actually going up by 1.4 million. So I will address what's happening in the general fund later, but this seems to be a shift in policy from funding the debt service by transfers from the general fund into the debt service fund and then passing the shortfall on to the taxpayers. The next item is the fire pension fund, which is on page 172. And here, you would note that if you look at the bottom, the revenue net surplus was 14 million in 2019. There was a deficit in 2020 of 900,000 plus, but the budget for the revenue for the net surplus is over $3 million for 2021, which is driving a requirement to levy an increased tax. If the levy was simply eliminated for the fire pension fund, it would affect the fund balance would go to pay by less than 0.4%. And then also the police.
Can you say that again? Can you say that again?
So the pension, in the fire pension fund, in the levy budget, the levy is proposed to be increased by $379,741. That is only 0.4% of the fund balance that is projected for 2021. In other words, it has a very small effect on the fund balance, and the current funding outside of the revenue that would come from a tax levy increase is more than sufficient to cover the expense that is budgeted, meaning the payout, the actuarial payout on the pension fund for 2021. So if you're projecting a net surplus on the pension fund in 2021, it would seem not to be necessary to increase the tax load on the taxpayer. And then the last item of increase on page 174, which is the police pension fund. Here, the pension fund is going up. So, but if you look at the revenue line, there's a line that's interest income, which was in 2019, $3,134,491, was budgeted and estimated to finish 2020 at 3.5 million, but 2021 shows a decrease of $2 million to 1.5 million. If you go back to page 172 on the fire pension fund, you see that the interest income is budgeted to remain the same between 2020 and 2021, both at 2.5 million. So there's an inconsistency here, and if the budget for the interest income was consistent between 2021 and 2020 on the police pension fund, you would completely eliminate any need to increase the tax levy and still increase the fund balance for the pension fund. So the last thing that I said I wanted to cover was the general fund expenditures. And that's pages basically 12 through 14. The worksheet showing an increase in revenue and decrease in expenses is based on the proposed 2021 budget. What's not explained is how you get from what the proposed actual expenditures for 2020, which is found on page 30, on the top part of page 30, that shows the general fund this year is expected to be just shy of 109 million, which is a 4.6% decrease over 2019 actuals. So the city is to be commended for, on relatively short notice, figuring out how to save roughly 5% of their budget. So the question really is, how can 2021 be put together so that you minimize the increase over what is actually going to happen in 2020, or the city's projecting to happen in 2020? And I think most households in Evanston would say, if they were confronted by a situation such as we all are in this recession and a vast reduction in revenue, that just cutting the budget 5% would not be very hard. So I'm suggesting that the city can come up with a budget for 2021 that's perhaps 2012 million and on be balanced, and that if 2021 ends up being better than we expect in terms of revenue generation and expenditures being controlled below budget, that the first million or two of good news be earmarked for the reserve fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you for so thoroughly going through the budget and being insightful with those comments. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Next up, we've got Sean Peck-Collier.
Good evening, Alder folks. Sorry, for some reason my camera is not starting. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Welcome.
Lovely. Thank you. So I think it is important to note that we have heard few complaints from our residents in terms of the level of service that our police officers are providing us. The budget claims to have eliminated 11 positions from the police department. These positions have been held vacant all year due to hiring freezes. And if my understanding is correct from what the city manager told the 6th Ward, we have additional positions currently being held vacant in the Evanston Police Department. So these 11 cut positions have resulted in no perceptible loss of service. So we're working with an already reduced police force, and we've had no complaints regarding the service that we've received, outside of the fact that they're over-policing our black and brown neighbors. So why are we increasing the Evanston Police Department General Fund by $800,000? Using the same FBI source released in the memo to the City Council by our police department last Friday, even with these 11 positions eliminated, Evanston's number of sworn officers is about 30% larger than similar-sized Cook County cities. In fact, if we take a look outside of Cook County, we have the highest level of total police department staffing and second highest level of officer and civilian staffing per capita of all Illinois cities of similar size. But we're below the average in violent crimes per capita. So why do we have such a bloated police force? Skokie, for example, has a higher level of crime than we do per capita and fewer officers that are handling it just fine. Why can't we follow their example and be as lean and efficient with our own police force? We also have Northwestern's police force policing about a third or so of Evanston. So again, we have to ask, why is our budget adding funding to our police force rather than cutting it? Evanston's poverty level is already at 13.3%. Our per capita income is $49,000, while the average officer's salary for this year is $143,000. With only 11% of officers living in Evanston, why are we raising property taxes without our officers sharing the burden through a slice of their salaries, or reducing the police general fund expenditures first? This appears to be incredibly financially and ethically irresponsible. Please consider moving funds from the police department into services that will reinvest in the lives of your citizens, especially during such a time as this, when we're in a recession and in the middle of a pandemic about to hit the second wave. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do we have Mike Vasilka with us?
I believe he's back, Mayor.
Okay. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Mike Basilko, 6th Ward. First of all, the average person living in Evanston would not know a budget hearing. Apparently a budget hearing required by law was occurring tonight. The the notice for the hearing was insufficient if the city actually wanted citizen participation. My guess is that the Pioneer Press classified ad in fine print, met the minimum requirement by law. The city manager did not reply to my request 4 or 5 days ago to explain more about the hearing and what it involved. A budget hearing was not mentioned in any of the recent ward meetings. I submitted budget questions online, but have not received any replies, and there have been no budget memos posted in response to my questions. How are citizens supposed to participate if it's basically a one-sided conversation? People don't have extra cash this year. Many people don't have extra cash any year, yet each and every year staff asks for a property tax increase, which council gladly approves. This is, of course, in addition to other taxes, other fees, and fine increases. Each and every year, staff's presentation includes a PowerPoint slide showing how little of the property tax increase is in proportion to what property taxpayers pay. They'll say it's only $100 or a couple $100, and that's the usual refrain. This year is a year where many people in Evanston and across the country could use that extra $100 or the extra couple $100 to pay their groceries, pay bills, pay a mortgage. I fully support Alderman Suffredin's recommendation to avoid a tax increase, and I would go further to recommend that the tax reduction be implemented to give back property tax owners what they have been paying in a very high tax district. During AP&W, I rattle off a number of things in the bills that should be considered for budget improvements next year. The one thing that we paid, if you add up all of the consultants that are in this month's bills list, it only adds up to about $100,000. I say that, with tongue in cheek because $100,000 is a lot of money. But consultants on an average month are much higher, and annually, I think we pay millions of dollars to consultants, outside consultants, and yet we hire, in theory, we're hiring experienced engineering people and planning people that shouldn't require all these consultants to be hired. I mean, this month, to reinforce the point, this month, there's an expenditure for a consultant to assess the need for a canoe launch. Now, granted, that was only a couple of $1,000s, but it's that ridiculous that we have to ask somebody or pay somebody to look at a canoe launch and whether or not it's appropriate. So the budget recommendation is to eliminate the practice of hiring outside consultants. 99% of them. I'm sure there's one or two that has to happen, but you would save millions of dollars on that line item annually alone and avoid a tax increase. I guess I'm going to save the rest of my comments for City Council because it gets into spending, another $815,000 for Bulleen Andrews at Robert Crown and a few other comments related to that. But there are things that we spend on a monthly basis, whether it's, you should scrutinize technology being used for some of our staff so that it's only being used like cell phones and other technology that might be used. It could be used for personal items as well as city items. It should only be used for city items if you're giving it to them and the taxpayers are paying for it. So I just say scrutinize what you spend on a monthly basis. And consultants is a big deal. You'd save millions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak at this public hearing?
We do not.
Okay. Hearing nothing further, then I hereby adjourn this budget public hearing. right. We're now going to move into mayor announcements and proclamations. I have no proclamations today, but I do want to just talk briefly about the situation with COVID-19. That situation, as I think people are aware, has grown worse since we last reported out on this. While Evanston, on relative terms, continues to do well, given our positivity rate, we are seeing the number of cases go up. We are seeing the positivity rate go up. As of today, our 7-day moving average for the positivity rate is now at a little less than 3%. As you'll recall, all summer we pretty much fluctuated between 1 and 1.5%. Last week we moved up to 2%, and now we're already close to 3%. The state positivity rate is at 6.5%. Cook County, suburban Cook County in the city of Chicago is, I believe, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, in the 7% range. We have seen multiple consecutive days of an increase. As a result of that, today, the governor announced a COVID-19 resurgence mitigation plan for EMS Region 10. Evanston is part of that region. And what that means is, frankly, more pain for our restaurant industry. The contact tracing that is being done not only here in Evanston but elsewhere is indicating transmission that's occurring at bars and restaurants. And as a result, they have put restrictions in place that will include no indoor service at restaurants for a time being, until we actually get these numbers back down. And that includes numbers in the entire region. People have come to me and said, well, hey, Mayor, we're doing well in Evanston. Can't we be exempted from that? The answer is no, because we are regional. We sort of succeed together or fail together. So there will be no indoor service. In terms of the size of groups that can get together, it had been, as I think everybody knew, no more than 50 people. But now with this combating resurgence plan, it is to be no more than 25 people that can be together. Again, should be practicing social distancing, wearing masks, and all of that. We can continue to eat outdoors at restaurants. I would encourage everybody to order takeout from our restaurants here. Again, they are really struggling. I could go to each alderman and they would tell you a story about the restaurants in their wards. And again, we don't want to lose the essence of Evanston in terms of so many of these great restaurants. Those are the two big changes in terms of effective Wednesday, no more indoor dining, and then guests being capped at 25. I want to stress that applies to everything, the 25. That applies to churches. That applies to our personal homes. If you're having people over, you should not be having any more than 25 people over. And again, preferably you're outdoors. And if you're close to one another, you are wearing masks. Our hospitalizations are increasing. That's one of the reasons that these actions are being taken. We are seeing the availability of ICU beds and surge medical beds decreasing. There's still capacity, but those numbers are going down. I want to stress to everyone the importance, particularly this year, for all of us to get a flu shot. We want to keep people out of the hospitals so that there are rooms in our hospitals for those that have severe cases of COVID-19. Okay. Again, what should we all be doing? I just want to stress, watch your distance, stay at least 6 feet apart from those outside of your household. Wear a face covering over your nose. I've seen some people not wearing it over your nose. You got to wear it over your nose, over your mouth in public settings. That's indoors and outdoors when social distancing is not practical. Wash your hands thoroughly. Avoid large gatherings. Stay home if you're experiencing any symptoms of COVID-19 or if you've been in close contact with a person who has been infected with COVID-19. The infection rate is increasing. Remember, all the efforts that we had this spring, late last winter and spring, was about reducing the exponential growth of this virus. That infection rate, we really want to see it at 1.0 or below, meaning one person only infects one other or less than one other person. Right now, I don't have the latest stat in front of me, but last week it was already at 1.25. So as that number goes up and it can increase quickly, we could see exponential growth. That's why these actions are being taken by the governor and all the different cities that are being impacted. There is going to be a testing event tomorrow at ETHS. It was also today. We had a lot of people show up today. It will be from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. tomorrow, and this is the state that's providing us one of their mobile testings. The number of tests that we have been doing month over month over month has been increasing since last March, so that's positive news. We continue to do contact tracings here in Evanston. To give you a sense, though, of the virus in Evanston, like I mentioned earlier, we are now, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, we are now experiencing an average of 16 cases per day on a 7-day moving average. We have 227 active cases here in Evanston. Ike Ogbo, our public health director, and his entire team continue to do contact tracing on all of them. I want to share just a little information on contact tracing that we have not shared before because this is sort of new data that we are getting. But since I can tell you in the last week, 50% of our COVID cases have been with those age 29 and younger. Those between 20 and 29 are representing, 30%, a little more than 30% of the cases in the last week here in Evanston. And 20% were under the age of 20. So we've got about 50% of the cases. That is different than the way it was this spring. We were seeing a large disproportionate number relative to older Evanstonians here. We're not seeing that right now. The fear is that, again, if we see a rise in the younger population and they meet with their parent, they see their parents, they see their grandparents, and this virus gets transferred to someone that could have much more severe complications of it. And that's what we want to avoid. We have seen that number, what I just gave you the stats for the last week. We have seen that change. Well, we've been seeing that grow since September 1st. So we've been monitoring this since September 1st. And so for all of you young people that are watching this, again, please think about your parents and your grandparents. Please wear a mask. We need to slow the transmission down among that age group. And if you're a parent and you have a teenager, you have a young adult, please have that conversation with them. We've done such a good job here in Evanston. I know that we've demonstrated to ourselves we're capable of continuing to do a good job containing and managing this virus, but we have work cut out for us as we head further into the fall and the winter. So we will start to continue to put more and more messages out to the community on what we need to do, as well as consider any particular actions that we need to take unique here to Evanston. So that's where we stand on COVID-19.
Mayor Haggerty, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
You might have mentioned this, but just again, can you say when these restrictions take effect?
So the restrictions take effect Wednesday. Okay. So this Wednesday, will no longer, the groups have to be 25 or less. I should say that excludes schools, okay, or education. All right. So that excludes schools if there's any, because you could say, oh, well, there's school that's going and there's 50 kids and everything, that's excluded right now from the restrictions that just came down today. I do want to make note one more thing on COVID-19, that the county today just announced a COVID-19 resident cash assistance program. Again, we talked about how our residents are hurting. Many of our restaurants are hurting. Many of our residents are hurting as well, particularly given that Congress was unable and had not renewed the additional supplemental to unemployment insurance. So the Cook County COVID-19 Resident Cash Assistance Program is available for residents in suburban Cook County. It will provide one-time payments in the amount of $600 to approximately 3,000 eligible households to support residents whose income is at or below 250% of the federal poverty level prior to March 1st, 2020. If you want to learn more about this, we have put information out and we'll continue to do that as a city on our website, but you can apply at relief-uptogether-develop.org/Suburban Cook County Fund. And that's where you can apply, or you can go to the city's website and we'll have information there about that program as well. That concludes my messages for today. I'm going to turn it over now to our permanent and new city manager, Erica Storley, for any messages.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no announcements this evening, but thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to our city clerk, Devon Reed. There's a lot going on with elections. I'm sure he has an update for us. Welcome, clerk.
Yes, I do. As mentioned, elections are well underway. I'll just give folks a quick update on our early voting numbers. Early voting, early voting is going on now at the Evanston Civic Center down in room G300. We've had, it seems like, an improved experience over since we last met, and I think a lot of folks are now pleased with some of the social distancing that is going on. As of 7 o'clock today, we've had 6,575 Evanstonians vote. That actually is a bit down from where we would have been at this point last year, but in 2016, I should say. But we still are on track as well as early vote, vote by mail numbers are way up, and so that'll factor in. We'll have those final numbers after the election. So you could actually say we're ahead, but we were at this point in 2016. So folks can still vote at the Civic Center from 8:30 a.m. Until 7 p.m. On weekdays and 9 to 5 on weekends. I do very quickly want to shift from the November election. I think folks, if you have any questions about that, folks can reach out to the clerk's office here locally or to the county clerk's office. If you have any issues with the mail-in ballot, we do just want to make sure when you're turning in that mail-in ballot, there is a drop box here at the Civic Center. You can skip the lines. If you have a mail-in ballot, make sure that you have your envelope, your outer envelope signed. And if you're dropping off for someone, then you want to make sure that they filled out the affidavit. Alderman Ray?
Clerk Reed, you said that 6,575 Evanstonians have voted. Can just Evanstonians vote at the Civic Center, or can others vote there?
Yeah, anyone in suburban Cook County can vote at the Evanston Civic Center.
All right. So are these just the 6,575 Evanstonians voted, and then there are others who have also voted there?
The vast majority of the folks are Evanstonians.
All right, but the total number, really, the total number of people who have voted at the Civic Center is 6,575. They are not all Evanstonians. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
No problem. If I can share my screen for a quick second, I do want to spend a second going through, where are we? There we go. We have an election coming up here locally, and I just want to take 2 minutes to run through this. We do have, there we go. We do have a few presentations posted online that folks can watch much longer than this. We have an hour-long presentation with the State Board of Elections. This is going to be 5 minutes here to run through this one. I presume this is a very effective place to get information out to folks who plan on running for office. So let's just quickly run through this. So as I have said before, the consolidated primary election is February 23rd, 2021. The election will take place April 6th, 2021. There's a mayoral primary if more than 2 candidates file to run, and a primary or aldermanic races where 4 or more candidates file to run. In the aldermanic race, the top 2 vote getters will move on to April if there is a primary, and in the mayoral race, if someone gets over 50%, they win outright in the February primary. The qualifications to run are these: the various wards. You can collect signatures from folks who live within your ward boundaries if you're running for alderman. If you're running citywide, of course, you can collect from any registered voter in the city of Evanston. Pro tip for folks, early voting is a very effective way to collect signatures if you're running citywide. And election day is a great time to collect signatures in wards, standing outside of polling places. Qualifications to run for office are that you have lived in the district in which you plan to run for at least 1 year. You are not eligible if you've been convicted of bribery, perjury, or a felony, and you must be 18 years or older by the date of the general election to run. Signature requirements, these are the various requirements by ward. It's based on a formula of 5 to 8% of the total number of votes cast in the last mayoral election. So folks who are on the dais now likely remember having a much smaller signature requirement 4 years ago, and the numbers have increased because voter turnout increased significantly in that election. So the ward with the highest signature requirement is the 6th ward, which had the highest voter turnout. The lowest signature requirement is the 5th ward, which you can get on the ballot with a minimum of 54 signatures. And just to be clear, this is the minimum number of signatures you can turn in, maximum number of signatures. Anything over the maximum number there will not be counted. Petitioning began August 25th, and what's really important here is filing occurs between November 16th and Monday, November 16th, and Monday, November 23rd. Your place on the ballot is determined by when you file. So if you file if you're in line 9 o'clock on November 16th, you enter a lottery for the top spot, and if you're in line for the final hour on the 23rd, you enter a lottery for the bottom spot. And then everyone who files in between just falls in place. Petition circulators and signers. So in order to circulate a petition, you must be 18 years or older by the date of the election and a U.S. citizen. So the circulator can live anywhere in the country, anywhere in the county. They don't have to be Evanstonians to circulate for any particular candidate. Circulators must personally witness all signatures on each sheet that they circulate. So you can't just leave a signature sheet on your front porch and have neighbors come by and sign unless you are personally observing each signature. Signers must be registered voters in the district. So in the ward, if you're running, and for aldermen, they must be registered voters in your ward. You may not sign a petition for more than one candidate running for a single office. So you can't sign for 2 candidates running for clerk or for mayor or for alderman in the same ward. If, for example, if Evanston elected our alderman like Skokie, which is at large, you could sign for the number of aldermen who are to be elected for those admin seats. There is an objection period that takes place from the final day of filing for a week out. Folks will have an opportunity to look at petitions as they're filed, and then they'll have up to a week after the last day for filing petitions to file an objection to those petitions if they see necessary that long. Filing what candidates will turn into the clerk's office is a statement of candidacy, a receipt of a statement of economic interest that is filed with the clerk's office. So you want to take this statement of economic interest to the Cook County Clerk's office. There's a satellite location at the Skokie Courthouse that you can have them stamp it. They will give you a copy of that stamped receipt, and then you'll submit that with your petitions before the last day of filing petitions. You'll also have your signature sheets. Those should be numbered consecutively, also bound. All of this together in securely in a packet. Campaign disclosure, very important. Campaign disclosure must be made for all candidates with expenditures or contributions exceeding $5,000, and donations are not to exceed $5,800 to any single candidate, to any single candidate from any individual. The State Board of Elections has a campaign disclosure guide on their website, and it is very important to be aware of that. If you're interested in running, most folks have used this link already, and you will have received information. But here's another link that is very helpful, and this is the 2021 State Board of Elections candidate guide. And here, what's relevant for Evanston folks running for local office here in Evanston is it's page 36. It's the P5 form, which the P5 form is a sample form. The P5 form, this is a sample petition. This is the language that a candidate will need for petitions here locally. And finally, to close this out, I do want to note for folks who may be watching who are maybe running for school board or some other district, the rules are and the form is slightly different if you're running for an office outside of the municipality. So you'll want to check with your election official. If it's the school board, it's the school board secretary. If it's park district, it's the park district secretary. So you can check with your official for that to find out rules. My plan is to, the building is still currently closed, and I think we expect the building to be still closed when the filing period comes. Maybe Ms. Storley can correct me if I'm wrong, but the clerk's office will, of course, be open, and we will notify folks before then how we'll arrange, a safe delivery of your petitions given the COVID situation, and make sure that folks who are in line on that first day at 9 o'clock are all counted properly, even with restrictions that we may have to have about folks standing inside of the building. So we'll figure that out and get that out to candidates as soon as possible. I can end my screen share. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, then
All right. Thank you, Clerk Reed, for that overview. And again, if anybody's watching this and they want to access that guide that you just showed, where should they go to find that?
My apologies. That guide is on the clerk's webpage. So if you go to cityofelvanston.com and you search for city clerk, you'll see a drop-down menu. We have reports and presentations sub-tab. And then on that tab, you will find a candidate guide. It's a 2021, filing for the 2021 municipal elections. It's also posted on our Facebook page along with a few videos.
Great.
Some more details.
Just a reminder, it's .org, not .com.
Oh, yes, .org.
Yep.
Okay.
And if you can't find it there, just go to a search engine, type in City of Evanston 2021 election guidelines, and it'll come up.
Sure. And I do want to acknowledge the receipt of a petition regarding. I think the matter is no longer on the agenda tonight, but I do want to acknowledge the receipt of the petition.
The petition for that, plan development project. Sure. Okay. Thank you, Clerk Reed, for those announcements. We're now going to move to public comment. Before we start public comment, I noticed that a lot of folks had signed up who wanted to speak about the project on Chicago Avenue. That project was discussed in depth in the Planning and Development Committee and did not pass out of committee. So I suppose you're welcome if you still want to talk about the project, but it's not before the Evanston City Council this evening. With that, even though I had more than 15 people signed up because so many were signed up related to that project, I'm going to assume I have less than 15 that will actually speak tonight. So per our rules, we will set aside 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes per person. If you need it, I'll keep track of it. If you get to the 3 minutes, you're going to hear a little beeper go off. Please just wrap it right up, or I'll have to interrupt and ask you to wrap it up so we can move on to the next speaker. Let's see, let me just pull up and we'll start. First up, we've got John Barfield, then Bob Froetscher. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing names here, and then Jennifer Washburn. We have John Barfield with us.
I don't believe so, Mayor.
Okay, how about Bob Froetscher?
I'm here.
Would you like to speak?
I just have a brief comment, Mayor, yes.
Go ahead, Bob.
First, I'd like to thank the Planning and Development Committee for their thorough and thoughtful consideration earlier today. I thought there were times where there was a little bit of testiness in the discussion, and I wanted to share with the older men and older women perspective from a citizen in the community. And I think it's very important for you to understand the power that you people hold. This is a city of 75,000 people. You make decisions that impact not only the community in a very general way, but people, human beings, in a very personal and individual way. And I think it's important to realize that. In this particular case, thousands of citizens have been following this particular development and working hard, following the rules or the process and protocol as we understood it. And have seen it consistently turned down. Dapper, Plan Commission staff twice, Plan Commission twice. And so when people put in that kind of effort and believe they have reached an outcome that they think is being, through that process and protocol, achieved, it's very distressing when they hear at the last Plan Commission meeting that the next step will be to review this at the Planning and Development Committee meeting, and then the City Council. To hear that otherwise happened is what causes angst, what causes lack of trust. And it is the perception of something that didn't happen the way it should. Just the perception of that is enough for that trust to be broken. That's all I'm going to say. I just think it's important for all of you, and I'm not speaking to anyone individually, but all of you to understand why you heard, I think the reaction you heard on the video on the Zoom earlier today. What you do has great power and influence. At a very personal level, some people's homes might have seen deterioration in value when they believe the process isn't fair, hasn't been followed after what they've been told, and that as a result, things are not happening in a way that is fair. It creates a perception, right or wrong. And so I think it's important for you to be aware of that. I thank you again for your time and diligence and thoughtful and considered opinions earlier today, and I appreciate the time right now as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Luke, I understand that John Barfield didn't get the invite, so if you could, behind the scenes, connect so we can get him on later, that would be good. Do we have Jennifer Washburn with us? And if not, then we've got Jennifer Fisher and then Reverend Grace Matthew.
Mayor, all three of them, or four of them, spoke at Planning and Development regarding the Church Street, Chicago Avenue development.
Yeah, I've got a lot that have signed up, and I don't have them crossed out, so I'm just going to call their name, but I expect, Alderman, that will be the case. So we'll keep going. William Brown, Dennis Harder, and Ray Friedman are next. Do we have William Brown? How about Dennis Harder? All right, hearing nothing. Ray Friedman, you're up.
Thank you. Good evening once again. You know what? First, before I make my comment for City Council, I really want to thank the gentleman that spoke at the public hearing, that laid out all the details of the budget, and I have to go back and listen to that. That was awesome. I just wanted to say thank you to that. I don't know his name, so that was one thing. So I was wondering if you're going to comment or address any comments from tonight's public hearing. That's just a question that I have. So I wanted to talk again about the process, which we're using to make these major decisions like the budget and hiring a city manager. Residents need to be involved with all major discussions on all major decisions. I was very impressed with the 1.5 hour question and answer session with the 3 city manager candidates a week and a half ago. I was just as disappointed by the lack of transparency, lack of resident input, and next day with your all-day closed-door marathon meetings to elect the new city manager. I'm requesting that you share with all of us the audio and video of the 3 resident meetings on that Thursday with the 3 candidates, so we all can see and hear what transpired at those meetings before you went into executive session. So I'm thinking that should be public record. And again, I'm totally disappointed with the lack of public budget discussions. We just haven't had any public discussions, and I've been talking about that for 2 years now. We have about 74,000 residents and about 9 wards. If you divide number of residents by ward, and I'm cutting it low, you've got about 8,000 people per ward. That's only 72,000 people. We all need input, discussion, and dialogue from all wards on all major decisions and projects. And I was looking at the 5 goals that we set, I believe, a year ago in 2019. So the 5 goals are invest in city infrastructure and facilities. I would say we probably did that. Stabilize long-term city finances. That was number 1. No, we haven't done that. Enhance community development and job creation citywide. No, haven't done that. Expand affordable housing options. I don't think so. Ensure equity in all city operations. Again, I don't think so. So out of these 5 city council goals for 2019-2020, you managed to accomplish 1. And I'm thinking if there's, I don't know why I keep thinking that if there's input from the residents, we can get a whole lot more accomplished working on it together than 9 of you working on it by yourselves and then coming back and arguing with the residents. I thought that the aldermen and alderwomen ran for this position to represent their own wards in the city of Evanston. So how would you be able to represent your ward residents if you had not had if you don't have regular discussions with us?
Thank you. Thank you, Ray, for sharing your opinion. Next up, we've got Galen Emerzian, and then Tina Payton, and then Darlene Cannon. Do we have Galen with us? I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the last name. I got it as Emerzian, Emerzian. All right, we'll move to the next one, seeing no one here. Do we have Tina Payton, then Darlene Cannon, then Doreen Price?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Okay, so I mentioned this at another city council meeting before, that all meetings, city council meeting, committee meetings, and ward meetings should be recorded. The mayor said when I made the comment that we would talk about it, or the council would talk about this, and I would like to see some dialogue about that. Last week, Ward 9, 7, 4, and 8 had ward meetings all at the same day and pretty much the same time. And I would have liked to attended most or all of them, but I was not allowed to because the discussion went longer. But because the meetings weren't recorded, we can't go back and see what happened at the other ward meeting. Also, I want to know, why is it okay to vote at City Hall, but we're not having city services at City Hall? How is it okay and safe to vote at City Hall with a lot of people, but not have city services? Also, I would like to talk about reparations. Reparations needs to issue a cash payment, as Alderman Ruth Simmons stated when she first presented it to the city council, saying that everyone qualified should receive a cash payment. This cash money will wrong the harms and not housing. Also, I want to know why we're discussing raises for the city officials during a pandemic. You have furloughed or fired city staff, cut city services, raised taxes and fees for services. The council should not vote on raising the salaries for themselves and put this on a later date when the budget is balanced and you control the pandemic. We have a lot of people that are hurting, as the mayor discussed. Our restaurants are closed, people are homeless, and this is not appropriate time for discussing more money for yourselves when we have budget crisis and harmful situations during the pandemic. I would also like to talk about briefly the housing situation, and I mentioned it at one of the other meetings, that how many affordable units for families have been approved by the city council, the developers. There's many other projects that are on the line or coming on the line that are discussing affordable units, which is mostly studios and 1 bedrooms. But what happened for families, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom? I thought that the city received a large sum of money and been giving that money to agencies to house families in Evanston, not outside of Evanston. And these new developments are not assisting in affordable housing, only for studios and 1 bedroom, which will not house any families. When you consider your affordable housing and these developments, you need to really look at who needs the housing, not 1 bedroom and studio. Thank you. Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Tina. All right. Next up, we've got Darlene Cannon. Then it looks like Doreen Price is not speaking tonight. Then Brenda Greer. Then Kira Kelly. Luke, if you could just chime in, because I'm seeing you cross names out as I'm looking at this list right now. Are you aware that people aren't here?
Yeah, I think a lot of them just dropped off after P&D, but
okay.
Doreen emailed me and said she wanted to not speak.
Doreen's not here. How about, is Brenda Greer here, Kira Kelly, or Renee Payton?
Brenda Greer is here. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can. Welcome, Brenda. You're up.
Yeah. Good evening. I'll make it brief since I just have 3 minutes. And my concern, and I did want to speak on the developer Horizon, but I won't. I will wait because I wanted to get in on the meeting when he was at reparations. I could not because of my equipment. So I will wait till I speak with my alderman, Simmons, and then also Rainey or at the meeting. The next thing I would like to speak on is why our homeowners aren't given grants to help repair their properties so that they will be able to rent to more people that are here in Evanston, and people will stop having to relocate and move out of Evanston. I think it's very unfair, and there are a lot of people. We have businesses that come in and get grants and loans or set up businesses in Evanston, and they stay for a year or two. Chicken and Waffles one, the Hyman Brothers Dempster and Dodge, the recycling center that was going to be a brewery. These people come in and get funds and money, and they don't stay, and then they leave. Are those funds paid back, or those loans, whatever grants are that they're given? So I find it unfair and unjust because I was pushed out of Evanston in '89 and I didn't return due to not being able to rent and the rental cost of Evanston and because of the landlords. But I did happen to come back to Evanston in 2007. So I find it very unfair, especially now that homeowners aren't given the grants that the city has where they could be able to fix their properties and continue to rent to people that were born here in Evanston or had ancestors that were here in Evanston and that care about the community and people. So that's one thing. The next thing is I'd like to touch on is it was said that there are 11 police officers that were let go or retired from the city of Evanston. I'd like to know how many police officers are still here employed, what wards they're patrolling in, that's night and day. And then there's another issue. There was some incidents going on with a family member. Officer Brooks was one of the officers that was involved, who I thought handled the situation very well, which is still kind of ongoing, very serious. And I'm told, or I think someone said he's going to be moved from the 5th Ward. I want to know why an officer that's familiar with the community and the people within the area and know what's going on in different situations and handle things very professional, why he's being moved from the 5th Ward and why he's not allowed to be able to continue to patrol in the 5th Ward, especially right now that this incident's going on and it's so crucial, and he's one of the officers that was very much involved and effective also. Another thing, a moment. Oh, that's wrapping it up. And I'd just like to say that, as Mike said earlier, these are crucial times. And I know the city is having a problem with the budget. I know that there are layoffs and referral and furloughs. But you as council members have to remember that the community at large voted each one of you in to look out for our concerns and our well-being and to consider our health and lives as you're making the decisions that you're making. So thank you for allowing me the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Greer. Next up, is Kira Kelly here? Renee Payden?
I'm here.
All right, Renee, you've got the floor. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Managers, Clerk Reed, and Alderman. I'd like to discuss reparations in general. I also agree with everything my sister Tina said earlier. The elders of the Black community deserve reparations, and they deserve it first. That should be a check placed in their hands to do with it whatever they want. Why is it that others can get money in hand, but the Black community in Evanston has to purchase a house or owe on a house in order to get reparations? Most elders have already purchased homes and paid off their mortgages. Some have left their homes and do not want to purchase another. They would, however, appreciate a check. The elders of the Black community want a check in their hands and not jump through hoops to get something they don't need. Give them a check before they all die and can't use it. Let's respect the elders of the Black community who have suffered the longest and the most. Give them a check. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Do we have Eric Singer with us?
Hi, hello.
Hi, welcome, Eric. And then after you, Eric, will be Mike Vasilko. I've got him as our last speaker tonight. Welcome, Eric.
Welcome. First, I'd like to just introduce myself. Some of you know me, but probably most of you don't. I opened a Lucky Platter in 1991, and I sold it in 2014. So I was on Main Street for 23 years. I also grew up here, and I'm still also in the business now. I teach cooking in the city, and I also do consulting work. So, when the governor came out today and put on this new mandate or restrictions on the restaurant, I just wanted to talk to it. Obviously, I take COVID very seriously. I'm still working every day with essential workers. I also teach young people, so there's been some incidents close to me where I've been very close to families that have had COVID and people that have been sick. So I want to just say that I take it very seriously. But I also want to say that I really believe that these restrictions being put on the restaurants are unfair. And I just want to say that I'm speaking for myself, even though I know a lot of the restaurateurs in the community. I haven't spoken with them today since I heard this, but I just wanted to talk with you as alderman about it. I'm not sure. We all know that these close quarters, that people do get sick, and it's possible that the restaurants are a place where this could happen. I'm personally a little more concerned in bar areas where there might be alcohol served, but I just want to say that these restaurateurs, many of them in Evanston, they're not only residents here, they're friends of ours, they're community members. And I just want to say that I feel like if they're willing to go out there each day and open their restaurants, and their crews are willing to go out there and risk their lives to go out into these restaurants, and their customers are willing to go out there and support their people, I think this deserves a lot more respect and attention that it's getting. I mean, I hope all of you understand. I mean, I've been in the restaurant business my whole life. They are not going to survive on to-goes. And this statement today that the governor placed about how we can still eat out in to-go areas or like outdoors, it snowed today, guys. I mean, how many restaurants are there outdoor people eating outdoors? I mean, I believe in these restaurateurs, and I believe that they're willing to protect their people and their customers are willing to come in and eat there. We need to support that. And what I would like to Evanston do, and you as aldermen do, and some of you know that I was more involved when I was younger in this kind of stuff, but I would like Evanston to come out and publicly say that we don't agree with the governor. Okay, we don't agree with this mandate that he's placed. We all know the numbers are going up. And I'm not in a position to say no, but I just say we need to support these people. And if they're willing to go out and open their restaurants and their customers are willing to come in and eat in their restaurants, that I trust them to protect us. And I don't know if you'd be willing to stand up for this, but I really believe it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for speaking on this. Appreciate it. Next up, we've got Mike Vasilko.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't on video earlier. I was driving. And speaking of earlier, I just want to thank the 3 other residents who located the notice and were able to speak at the budget hearing. Really wasn't much of a budget hearing, to be honest. As I recall, the one piece of paper I found in the packet, there was supposed to be a presentation and some other things. None of that happened. But I just want to reiterate, I'm not even sure, I mean, it gives people the wrong feeling when, you know, they're invited to a budget hearing, even though it was, you had to dig for it, and there's no exchange of information. So a budget hearing to me is I ask questions, somebody on staff answers the questions. It's kind of like the budget memos. You ask questions. Ideally, somebody's supposed to get back to you, which they haven't done. So it's really, despite what all the council members say, it's really less than transparent when it comes to this budget process. And the few of us that actually come out and speak, we don't really get the recognition that we should. On the flip side, now that we're at the council meeting and there was, sounds like less than 10 or 12 people that are speaking at the council meeting, again, it's always the same people, which I know annoys the council to a certain extent. And I have to say, it annoys me that these people that I know, hundreds of people that talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. Why they're not on this call, I don't know. So that's a reverse shout out to the residents of Evanston who complain about all the that takes place, but they don't show up. So I just want to put that on record.
Mayor, can you please get control over the language that's being used? These are public meetings where children could be listening.
Okay, well that's language
children do to this.
There's nothing wrong with that language according to the rules of the committee. So you've interrupted me again, and if you don't mind, I'm going to continue. Back to the budget process. That's what I want to focus on again tonight. You again, shout out to Tom Suffredin, the only one who sticks his neck out to say, don't raise taxes this year. There are other people a few people who have said the same thing from the citizen side, but the alderman immediately jumped on Tom Suffredin the last time he tested the waters about actually cutting things enough where you don't have to raise taxes. That could be done, as I mentioned in the budget hearing, by simply not using consultants every time you need somebody to tell you whether or not you need a canoe launch in the lake and other ridiculous things.
Mike, we're at 3 minutes. If you could wrap up.
Okay. Well, I just want to say there's, as other people have said during the budget hearing, and Ray Friedman said, and a few others, we need to have participation where we ask questions and we get answers. I sent an email before this earlier today asking that Tom Suffredin suggest we have staff available on a Saturday or Sunday where citizens can go to a Zoom place and ask questions, have a dialogue, raise favorite word, a dialogue, get questions, have a discussion with staff, get an understanding. They would better understand us. I'd appreciate if somebody would do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Right. Luke, On my end, it looks like I've completed the list. Is that correct on your end?
That's correct.
Okay, so I know I had called John Barfield earlier, but he was not able to get in, or we weren't able to connect with him today, I guess, to get him the information. Okay, well, that concludes public comment. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your perspective on a variety of issues. We're now going to move into the agenda tonight. And the first item is a discussion about the 2021 proposed budget. Alderman Rainey, could you just introduce that for discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. That is a special order of business, SP1, 2021 proposed budget discussion. Staff requests a discussion on the 2021 proposed budget. I move approval of the discussion.
Second?
Second.
All right, so this item's now opened up for discussion. I'm going to turn to our city manager, Manager Storley, to start us off. I know a lot of work has occurred in the last week since we had the presentation on the budget. You could take it from there, Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So yes, we have begun doing a lot of ward meetings in the past week, and we have a lot more coming up in the next 2 weeks. We're having a lot of discussions amongst ward residents at those meetings. And additionally, we did our introductory overview of the proposed 2021 budget at last week's city council meeting. So since then, we have been able to release several budget memos that came out on Friday, addressing most of the first round of questions. There were a few that we didn't have time to complete, which will likely be out this Friday. But we did prepare a very short presentation to address the question about fund balance, and then to talk a little bit more about how we're staffing our Health and Human Services Department to assist the pandemic going into next year. So if we could just take 5 to 7 minutes to go over that slide presentation, then we can have a further discussion.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, my video cut out. Did you want me to share, Erica?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. All right, so good evening, Mayor, members of council. Just a couple of slides, as Erica mentioned, on the 2021 proposed budget here. So to jump over to the fund balance discussion, in our 2021 proposed budget, we have included a $1 million contribution to fund balance and funding half of that, $500,000 from property taxes. The City Council's fund balance policy that was adopted a number of years ago is for 16.6% of expenses, which is 2 months of our annual expenses. General fund balance is a pretty important indicator of the city's financial health. The rating agencies do review this as an indicator of our financial picture and our financial health during the ratings review process. And it, of course, is an important measure when we are facing a year like 2020, when we have unexpected circumstances that cause us to draw on that fund balance and use a deficit to accomplish those needs.
What you doing?
So this slide just shows a couple of scenarios that we put together in a budget memo about how to address the fund balance policy of 16.6% with an annual contribution of $1 million, which was included in the 2021 proposed budget. We would reach that goal by 2025. With an annual contribution down to $500,000, we would still be short of that policy goal by 2025. Or we could look at a scenario where we have an increasing contribution each year. If we start at $500,000 next year and increased by that amount each year, we get to the goal by 2024. So this is a chart just laying out those couple of scenarios. So the policy amount is in red at the top. You can see that we'll reach it by 2025 if we do that sort of increasing application in by 2025 if we do a standard $1 million per year. And then we won't be reaching that policy in time if we only contribute $500,000 per year. So just a few options to consider and to sort of feed into discussion this evening. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ike to talk a little bit about health and human services for a couple of slides.
Good day, members of council. This is the Ike Health Service Department. I'm going to give a brief overview of our T21. But I want to thank the City Council, the Mayor, City Manager, the staff, our community members.
One second, Director.
Through the President. Yes.
Can you make some kind of adjustment? Is it only me that is having a hard time understanding the Director?
No.
Okay. No. Can you make some type of a mic adjustment because we are.
Thank you. Call back.
That's his silky smooth voice. Yell at him, Mike. They're having hard hearing issues.
No, it's a echo. No. Call back in.
Can you do something?
Okay. No, he's got to call back.
Okay.
Turn off. If you turn off your camera, see if that's better.
Okay, let me see. Let me turn off the camera.
That's good.
Is that better?
No.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, it's better. Okay. All right, sorry about that. All right, I turned off my camera. All right, so as I was saying, I was thanking the City Council, the Mayor, City Manager, staff, the community at large for their tremendous support of the department's efforts during this unprecedented times. There are a number of measures or strategies that we employed in 2020 that, of course, will be extended into 2021. One being maintaining situational awareness. At the beginning of the pandemic and through the pandemic, we've maintained situational awareness with CDC and IDPH regarding information and protocols that we've applied to our mitigation efforts and activities in Evanston, and we'll continue to do so in 2021. Another measure, of course, is our contact tracing and case interviewing program, which has been very instrumental in limiting the spread of the virus in our community and preventing deaths. This is a program that we established at the beginning of the pandemic, even prior to us getting those 2 confirmed cases in March, and going to be part of our response in the future and, of course, in 2021. Another measure that, of course, we've taken is making sure that we're supporting our long-term care facilities and congregate homes through infectious disease measures, visitations at the facilities to ensure that public health protocols are implemented and executed well at these facilities. And not only that, distribution of PPE that they need to combat this virus has also been part of the program. So far, the city has distributed about 27,000 PPE items to various congregate homes and congregate settings in Evanston, and it's something that will continue 2021. Another hallmark of our response has been expanding testing. This has been made to come to fruition with partnerships with Amida Health and the state. So far, we've had over 6 testing campaigns, which have been very successful. Kate, if you can give me the other slide. All right. So another aspect of our response, of course, has been food assistance for those who've been heavily impacted by COVID-19, those individuals who have been food insecure, been able to provide food assistance through our EAGA programs. And not only that, our community members have also come to the aid through donations and their goodwill that resulted in us establishing a food pantry. There we were able to provide hundreds of food boxes to our residents who are undergoing food insecurity during this pandemic. Another avenue that we, of course, explored is housing availability for those impacted by COVID-19. Housing is available now for individuals who need to isolate or quarantine because they can't do so effectively in their homes. We've been able to provide guidance for schools, businesses, the community at large as we navigate this pandemic. We've been able to review plans, add comments, provide input for plans, Northwestern University and other entities that they've used to reopen their schools and operate. Issuing orders, notices, and responding to complaints. This is, of course, a hallmark of our response, where we're issuing notices. Those notices have to be a notice of violation. Notices can also pertain to providing new guidelines to various entities. We've responded to over 650 complaints during this COVID response, and we'll continue to do so in 2021. If I could get the other slide. So, other priorities that are not directly related to COVID-19 except for mass vaccination, we continue to revise our plans, engage the state in regards to when a vaccine will be made available. We continue to add information based on latest developments and information that we receive from the state. Also, what we're planning on doing in 2021 is to look at the emergency response alternative. We've had several meetings at our Human Services Committee meetings to discuss this topic. A subcommittee has been formed and funds have been designated to implement this program in 2021. This is actually a comprehensive plan to support residents needing critical services by looking at it from a social service lens or approach. Improving social services and programs is another priority for the Health and Human Services Department in 2021. The amalgamation of our social services under the umbrella of the Health and Human Services Department is to approach social services from an integrated, holistic, and equitable manner. And it is something that we'll continue to work on in 2021. When it comes to staffing, in order to execute these critical services, we need them. We've been able to supplement our staffing through grants that we received and applied for, and we'll continue to apply for grants in 2021 in order to provide resources and other things that we need in the department. We filled positions in 2021 that are critical to our operations, and we plan to fill a number of vacancies in the department in 2021. We are also looking at our volunteers. For all those who know, our MRCs were very instrumental in our COVID-19 response, and we're looking to increase our volunteer pool, not just in the infectious disease unit, but of course in our social services and other aspects of our response. Also, contingencies budgeting is very vital in staffing, where we will designate some amount of money if additional staffing is needed. That will pertain to perhaps contracts or seasonal employees as we continue along into this pandemic. And that's the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you very much, Ike. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
At this time, I would entertain any questions regarding the budget or any discussion amongst the council members.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Ike. Thank you, Kate. Let's start with Alderman Rainey.
I have a question for Ike. I'm sorry, I was slow raising my hand. When the order came out today about closing down restaurants in Illinois and especially Cook County, there was an exception in that order saying except for Evanston, Skokie, a couple of other places that have their own health departments. the order did not apply to them. Is the, and also given the comment this evening, is there any way we could modify that order for Evanston? And what is Ike's comments about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Alderman Rainey, the order comes from the governor, and as you know, we are in Region 10. So we make up the number of municipalities that are in Region 10. And if we don't comply with the instructions given by the governor, for example, let's use our restaurants for example, that will actually attract other people who will come from elsewhere to our restaurants, and of course, maybe perhaps increase the transmission rates here in Evanston. So whenever an order of sorts is issued, we follow suit. Even though at this point, Evanston is doing well, our positivity rate is approximately 3%. We've actually seen it rise from the summer when we was experiencing a positivity rate of 1 to about 1.5. But overall, Evanston is doing well. But when an order of this sort is provided by the governor that affects our region, we have to follow suit.
I understand the logic of that. But when I read that, my heart just broke because I know how serious trouble some of our restaurants are in. So, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Fleming?
Yeah, I have a budget question. Thank you to Ms. Collier who brought up some issues that I have written down, but she articulated them in much more of a financially savvy way. So I did have a question about the $1 million to the fund balance. The budget memo didn't really speak to the credit rating, which I think was one of the questions. How would that impact our credit rating? But I am concerned about the property tax raise, just as we all are with all of the residents who are not in a good financial place. And so I would propose that we really look at not doing the $1 million fund balance. I realize it's our internal policy, and I think it is a good policy. But in a year where we're just not doing well as a city and our residents are just really hurting financially, I think we should really just think about skipping that or maybe revisiting that even in the middle of the year based on where we are financially with the pandemic. In addition, I would say the same thing for the pension contributions. I know that we are overfunding from what the state requires. And again, I think in a healthy financial year, it's a good policy, but this is a year where we need to really be thinking about how to tighten up some spending. And so we don't have to pass those costs on to the residents. And so even with those two things, we exceed the $3.2 million increase we're looking at from property taxes. Again, our pensions and our fund balance could be better, but I think those are two kind of, I don't want to say low hanging fruit, but two easy things we could postpone funding in this budget year in order to not pass that cost over to our residents. There are a couple other things that are smaller items that I think would signal to our community that we are very serious about the financial place we're in and the financial place that they're in. If you look at the memo for the police department, their recommended training, I know they have lots of mandatory training, but they have an average of about $125,000 in recommended training that I would want us to look at seriously and see where we can cut back some of those items. I'll continue with the car allowance. I know that we will have to pay some people back with the car allowance. If we don't do the car allowance, but given that the buildings are closed, lots of meetings are Zoom, I'm imagining staff who would be receiving those reimbursements because they're going to things just aren't really going that many places nowadays. And then another item is the health payment, the $150 a month, I believe people can take if they are not taking our health insurance. Just want to be clear that that's a benefit, not a requirement. If somebody can answer that question for me, just want to make sure that I'm reading that correctly, because that's about $81,000 that, again, I think our staff, I'm sure would like that, and it's a nice benefit, but given that we've laid off so many people and are looking at, again, the unemployment numbers rise around our city, I think that would be a good way to save some money and, again, signal that we value our employees, we want to keep our employees employed, and if this is a way that we can get our finances in better shape and not look at laying off more people should we really see bigger numbers and a shutdown and things again. That's another way we can be a little more financially sound in these decisions for this budget year.
Thank you, Alderwoman Fleming.
If it's okay, I'd like to add
Go
some
ahead.
commentary
Yeah,
to that.
go ahead, Manager Storley, then I'll go to Alderman Fisk.
Thank you. Thank you. So excellent points brought up. Thank you, Alderman Fleming. First, I wanted to touch on the $150 a month insurance incentive. So that's given to employees who choose to use their spouse's insurance instead of using the city's insurance. So that $150 a month incentivizes people to use other insurance that's not the city's, and in a sense saves us a lot of money, because if people were to choose to use our insurance, we would be paying 80% of their insurance plus all their claims. So it's hasn't been increased in many years. It's been $150 for as long as I can remember, but it does help people make a decision that's best for their family about which insurance they may choose to use. And if they were to choose to use the city's, that would be an extra $20,000 expense for a family for the city versus the annual cost of the incentive. So we have considered that and can continue to consider it. But my fear would be if we eliminated it, it would end up costing us more money because people would choose to use our insurance in lieu of their spouses, because everybody is required to have an insurance plan, whether it's ours or a spouse's. But they do have a choice in which one they choose. And if they choose to use their spouses, it's certainly less cost for the city in the long run, because we're not paying the cost of the insurance, and because we're self-insured, we pay the full cost of any claim that anybody would get if they go to the doctor, have a baby, have a health need, anything like that. So the long-term costs they add up. And then I was going to ask Kitesh to speak to the fund balance and how it relates to our bond rating. So we have been fairly stable in our ratings with our bond rating agencies. But what they do like to see is a plan. So if there is a consensus on the council to entertain reducing or even eliminating the fund balance contribution for this year, the rating agencies would like to know that there is a plan in place to get back up to that policy level. So I would suggest that if there is a consensus to reduce that contribution, that we would not eliminate it entirely, but would fund it at some level that the council would agree to, and then select one of the plans that was laid out in the budget memo to commit to for future years, so that when we have our rating calls with the agencies, we can say that there was a plan selected that the council was committing to for future years to get us back up to where we need to be. So Hitesh, I don't know if you want to add anything additional to that.
Thank you, Erica. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. And Erica, absolutely, you're right. I mean, I wish, yes, we could reduce the tax levy, obviously, particularly post-COVID, and have a less burden on the residents by reducing either the pensions levy or not contributing to the fund balance. But the two important factors they look into, the rating agency, and this is based on at least my last 6 to 7 years, 3 years in Evanston and 3 years before that in the previous job. These are the two main considerations. What is your fund balance history for the last 5 years for general fund? And secondly, how are your pension funds funding level? And I mentioned the police pension is right around 54%, fire pension around 48%. So it is hard for us, and I have all those three with the Fitch. We have a rating of AA+, which is just one notch below the highest of AAA. We did this first year with the S&P, where we have a AA, which is 2 below the highest. And last year we were with the Moody's with a AA2, which is again 2 below the highest. But again, every time they would kind of caution me about our low fund balance and not complying with our own adopted fund balance policy, and high liabilities in the police pension and funding pension, the fire pension. So yes, obviously we have to really look at carefully and make the right decision, because in the long run, it might cost us more in terms of a debt service interest cost, and we might have to raise that tax levy.
All right, let's go with Alderman Fisk and then Alderman Sufferton.
I'd like to hear what Alderman Sufferton has to say first.
All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Alderman Fisk. I just wanted to see if there's some sort of estimate that you could give on what it would cost additionally if we were downgraded a notch. I mean, can you put numbers to it? Or I mean, I understand that that's speculative, but I mean, could you give an example of like what the cost of capital would be if we were downgraded a notch because of the reserve balance?
Alderman Safadin, yes, again, it's depending on the bond issuance, right? Whether we issue 10 million, 20 million, and the market at that time, sometimes the spread is higher than the other years. But they say on an average, it could be anywhere from 10 to 20 basis points, And so if we, like we did a couple of years when we issued the Crown bond, it could be a substantial amount in hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest cost.
Thank you, Hitesh.
Alderman Fisk.
So Hitesh, you sit in these meetings with the bond people. I mean, what, or the ratings people, I mean, what's your recommendation? I mean, we've worked really, really hard to increase our rating and keep it stable. And I really appreciate all the work that's been done. Obviously, we're in, a completely unexpected and terrible position here. I mean, do you think the bond ratings folks are going to be sympathetic to communities who have a plan and who are trying their best? I don't expect them to be sympathetic, but how best can you spin this for us with them?
And again, Alderman Fisk, good evening. I mean, last couple of years we talked to them, whether it's the Moody's, this year S&P, and obviously Fitch rating. I mean, they always bring it up, this thing. And when I say that, look at that, we are doing this, that, and they say, but yes. And then they say, compared to other communities who have the same rating. And I have looked at it. I mean, I think in the past, I don't know whether I shared this with the budget committee while I was talking to one of the finance director, where they have a 50% of the fund balance in general fund. And so they say, we don't levy for the police pension and fire pension because we take it out of our surplus. And then I looked at their fund balance and it's over 50% of the general fund expense. So obviously, some of those communities can afford to do that. We are kind of on the borderline in terms of our high liabilities. Obviously, we have a mature police and fire department, so we are carrying huge police and fire pension liabilities. At the same time, this is the COVID or even in the past, we have fund balance, but not up to that 2 months, which is a kind of a standard accepted by all. And that's why we run. And the other thing I caution, and again, I would say very sensibly that, yes, I like to reduce the property tax levy, but it is so hard to bring and gain that extra notch. Once you are downgraded, it would be kind of next to kind of impossible kind of thing, and particularly in the post-COVID, to kind of plead our case and get that rating back.
Okay, well, that's sobering. So in a larger sense, I guess this is what my concern is. I mean, I'm not sure that we've hit bottom on everything. We probably won't know until next year. But my concern is, how do we build back up? I mean, my own feeling is that we've cut staff as far as we can cut them. I mean, we're not, unless other people have different experiences. Staff response is being delayed. Staff is being asked to do more than they really can do. I think morale is generally, well, let's just say it's strained. don't see what our path forward is to get us over time back to a normal. And let's just say things turned normal, quote unquote normal, next fall. That new normal is going to be very different than the normal that we've seen in previous years. So I'm searching for a way to try to figure out how to keep our costs to our residents as low as possible. I would love to avoid a property tax increase. I'm looking to staff to try to help us figure out a scenario that makes sense. Now, I do think the chart for that you provided was really helpful. But how do we get out? How do we get out of the rest of it? How do we get back to normal with increasing staffing to where it's supposed to be and digging ourselves out of this hole? I don't expect an answer from you guys tonight, but that's what I'm really concerned about, because again, if we take 2 steps backwards and then how many in 1 step forward each year, we're never going to have to catch up. I really think that we've tried so hard on the pension funding, trying to catch up with back from the 90s or 80s even with the pensions, and all of this is at risk. So I'm just trying to figure out a way forward, and that's where I expect at least you guys are thinking about that. So if you can help me, that would make me much more comfortable about trying to figure out what position I'm going to take regarding the budget.
So as far as the fund balance concerned, Alderman Fisk, we suggested, and that could make sense, that, okay, one of the scenario could be where we contribute only $500,000. So at least it's a right step, it's a step in the right direction. And even when I go to the rating agencies, I said, yes, look at that. Even in the worst scenario, post-COVID, the city council was kind of cognizant of the fact, and they decided to contribute at least $500,000, considering our general fund. And in terms of overall debt, staff has been conscious about it. You looked at it for 2020 and even 2021. We reduced our CIP funding, where we borrow the fund. So from 10 million to around $6.5 million. So yeah, we are constantly kind of searching for those kind of a solution.
All right, a few other Alderman. I think I thought I had Rainey, then Fleming, then Braithwaite. Alderman Rainey.
Yeah. Okay. To reduce our bond rating, I don't think we even want to mess with that, because when we go to the bond market, our bonds get snapped up like crazy. And you start reducing the bond rating, and, we go in a pot with all these other, low rated communities, and Evanston no longer stands out. And so I just can't imagine that we would want to start messing with our bond rating. Whatever we can do to protect it.
Thank you.
And also, in talking about reducing the property tax, I think that's a great idea. But we nickel and dime people with items that are much more regressive than the property tax. You think about it. We add $1 onto this, $2 onto that, which everybody has to absorb. Not everybody has, the property tax. I've been checking randomly at some of my constituents. Their taxes went down last year, their property taxes. But you add to the parking meters, you add to the garage, you add to solid waste collection or yard waste collection, and that's things that come out of people's pocket every single month. And that's where the regressive costs are. And so I would look at some of those items as well if you're going to look at the property taxes.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Fleming, Alderwoman Fleming, then Alderman Braithwaite, then Alderman Nguyen.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I don't want our bond rating to go down either, but we all know the state of people's pocketbooks nowadays, and we talk about our restaurants that, probably are not going to make it into next year. Some of them because, they're we know the commercial buildings, their taxes went through the roof last year, which is, on the county, but still, part of our property tax base. And so I saw your proposal, Hitesh. I would be, I can look at the one that was $500,000 going back in. I would think, and I'm not a bond rater, but I would think that lots of communities are going to be in a very bad place next year. Hopefully we are in a better place than some other ones. But going from, I don't know if that automatically takes us from a AA to an A. But I think we have to really be serious about keeping the cost down for our residents. I think Alderman Rainey's right. I mean, I looked at the solid waste trash increase. It's, I don't like it either, but it's a small amount of money, so it's not going to really help in terms of making this budget balance today. But these are bigger items that I think, we can do. The same thing attached with the pension. I would like to have a better idea, and I know they can't tell us for sure, but if we did not this year increase more than the state asked us to, I think we have a very viable reason. It's not like we're not increasing because we just don't want to. We're explaining as they know that we're in a pandemic, and we have our citizens just have lots of financial needs, and we don't want to be a burden to them, right? I would not suggest cutting any staff. I do think our staff are pretty thin already, but these are a couple of things that I think we can think seriously about. If we have a change in the economy, we can put more money into it next year if we have some kind of surplus. But we have no idea what the federal government's going to do. I mean, we just have so many unknowns. And a 5% tax increase, even though we can look at the chart and think that it's relatively small, it's not small for families who just aren't making it. Or for the optics, as we talked about earlier, just of that we would increase these things when there's a couple ways in which we can decrease some spending. Like I said, this optional EPD training, just like families do when they have a budget deficit, you don't buy everything you usually buy. So I would like us to really consider how we can tighten up the budget to keep as much of the property tax increase down.
Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I've been doing more listening than talking. So, Erica, I would like to see what it would look like if we were reduced our fund balance by 500. And I don't know if we need a motion to direct you to do that. If so, I would move just to look at that, reduce the fund balance by 500 and have staff come back with something concrete versus hypothetical.
Second.
Can we take action on the discussion item, or?
I mean, we're just directing the staff at this point, Alderman Wilson. We're not making a decision.
I don't think we need a motion. Sorry, this is Kelly. Good evening, everyone. I don't think we need a motion. I think this is just discussion. So the city manager can direct staff to come back with that proposal if she wants to.
Well, then that would be my recommendation.
I wouldn't mind a straw poll just to see if there's consensus.
Yeah,
amongst the
Yep.
council members. So
I'm in support of that.
Me too.
2, 3, 4.
If you could just clarify, because there was information in the memo, so if you can just clarify what else you're looking for, then that would, are you looking for how it would impact our bond rating more so than what the numbers are?
It's just, I mean, I've been listening to the conversation back and forth. So if we're going to do it, and if it doesn't impact our bond rating, but I've heard a little bit back and forth, so that my motion still, the direction still stands. So at this point, I think there's enough consistency amongst us to make it happen at this point.
And so to be clear, you're requesting that with a priority on not reducing our bond rating, looking at ways to
Exactly.
Not increase taxes.
That is correct. That is correct.
I'm in support of that.
And then the second, we didn't talk about this at the last meeting, but we all have projects that we prioritize in our various wards. I think we could also look to do an overall and put it back in staff hands in terms of our capital budget. And I know roads are important, parks are important, lights are important, but if you're not willing to spend that extra $100 for those houses that are impacted, then we should also look at capital projects and figure out which ones in a very tough year can wait until next year.
I fully support that.
Well, unless we already have the bond money available to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's not something that we could do tonight, but I think if there's just a general understanding that there are projects, if there's something that can wait another year, and I know roads are important, sidewalks, parks, etc., but now would be the year to hold and wait for next year's budget or the following year. So that would be, again, another suggestion that you want to take a straw poll just to see if there's enough people that support it. I would suggest that as well.
Before we do that, can we just get a refresher from Hitesh or Erica on the capital budget? Didn't we already take it from 10 to 6 million or 6.5 million for 2021? Or are we keeping it where it was, in 2018, 2019, 2020? I thought it was reduced.
We did make a significant reduction to the capital budget, but we haven't done a budget memo about this topic specifically, so we could go back and take a look at what's in there, and if there's anything that doesn't have any matching funds from the state or federal government, or looks like it could possibly be something that could be postponed a year, we could put that in a budget memo for your review.
Yep. I think anything, for example, that's in design phase, if we could save some money, Erica, that would be a good place to start. And I would leave it up to you. I mean, I could go back through it and nickel and dime it. I'm sure we all can, but I'd put that in staff hands and see what you can come up with. I also am curious, and I want to go back and maybe if you can send it to me, because I know all the consulting fees and we heard that before. That is something that I would want to take a careful look at to see what's budgeted for next year. And I think those things, if they don't come out of our capital budget, I would like to see from the various departments what we have scheduled for 2021 and maybe save some dollars there. Thank you.
We got Alderman Nguyen, then Alderman Rainey.
Yes, I think the most important thing that I've heard this evening, and I appreciate this really thoughtful discussion, was Hitesh, when you explained how difficult it is to regain, go upward in grading bond ratings. I think I've always thought that, if you met the formula, then you increased. And if you didn't, you came back down, and it was kind of a straight slope. But I think you're saying tonight if you lose a rating, how difficult it is to get back. It makes me more fully understand how precious our AAA bond rating was for all those years. And that to me is the most actually worrisome piece of information you've given us. So I would like to understand better what the implications are, and if this can be done relatively without too much staff time, explain, like even using this now, like based on what the debt we have that we went out to GO bonds that we went out on this year at our current rating, and what the interest rate would have been if we were downgraded a notch. Just so that we can understand, like, the long-term implications are that everything that we do based on bond funds then suddenly immediately becomes much more expensive for all of us. So I am very, very concerned about having us drop down a notch, because recognizing that getting back that rating is not as simple as I had first thought it was. So I'd like to understand that better so we all can see the numbers on that. That's kind of a hidden cost and a hidden savings that when we have that AAA rating. I think Alderman Rainey's point about the fact that we sell our bonds so quickly is really, really important, and it's something we talk about, but I don't know whether the public fully understands what that means in terms of the cost of everything, just everything. And to Alderman Fleming, I appreciate the idea that we would not necessarily provide the funding for our police and fire funding, except go back to the level that the state recommends. Except before you were on the council, this was an incredibly detailed discussion that we'd had over a period of years, and the recognition that by simply putting in the amount that the state had been recommending had gotten us into this really terrible position that we were in, and that in order to climb back out of it, we've really struggled to put more and more in, and that actually has helped us helped us maintain the bond rating that we've had. And I would be really reluctant to go even lose a step. I recognize that this is all part of the entire picture, but I would be very concerned about how far back we fall by only putting in the amount that the state recommends. And so I guess I would want to see what happens, what the effect of that is as well, Hitesh, in terms of our funding levels. We're just barely getting into better territory, and we have been working at it for probably 10 years. And I also would like to look at every possible way to reduce the property tax increase, but I don't want to do it at the expense of having long-term overall cost increase to the entire community. So I appreciate what Alderman Braithwaite said about having our engineering department basically value engineer our capital improvements projects and really scrub them to see what it is that makes sense in terms of spending efficiency. I don't want them to put off something that then we'll have to spend much more on to catch up. But, what is it we could delay? A park improvement, as Peter said, a street repaving, as long as it doesn't cost us 3 times as much, than to repair the street later. But what are all of those things that if we can really scrub those costs?
Thank you. Thank you. Alderman Rainey.
I was going to talk about something else, but to Alderman Nguyen's point, I just had our chief engineer tell me when I had a conference with her that it took 6 months for her to get people in her department to find the time to work with the Levy Foundation, who was spending $360,000 of their own money to put together a bid package for a project to redo the Linden Room at the Levy Center. I don't know that they have the time or the staff to start value engineering all the projects. I think we have a shortage of staff. So I just wanted to comment on that. I want to know if we were to reduce our bond rating, Hitesh, would that have any effect on refunding?
Yes, Alderman Rainey.
It would?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about that. Thank you.
Okay. I was just going to add one comment on that too, actually two. Yes, to your point, Alderman Rainey, our infrastructure is rapidly aged and aging, and we have been continually behind on our capital for decades. It's not a new thing. We know we have buildings that we have a challenge to maintain because of the age of them and the fact that we haven't been able to maintain them to a level that we would like to over the course of time. So that lends itself to why the council decided late last year or early this year to do the city assets RFP, to look at our assets and sort of right size them and reinvest in those that are the most important and allocate our resources so that we can maintain the buildings and the infrastructure to the best of our ability. So that is something that we'll continue to look at over the course of the next few years But we really do own quite a few properties, and we have an extraordinary amount of infrastructure that we need to maintain on a year-to-year basis. And I think our staff does a phenomenal job of trying to stretch every dollar. But at the end of the day, what we own and how much it needs to be repaired and replaced and kept in good working condition it far exceeds the amount of money that we can actually allocate it to every year. That's a simple mathematical equation that isn't going to change until one of the denominators changes. So something that we are just continually mindful of, and we'll work on a multi-year plan going forward, trying to look at those in greater detail. But I also wanted to mention the situation that we're in right now. The pandemic is unlike anything we've ever seen before. It's similar in some ways to the recession that we had in 2008, where we had massive restructuring and layoffs, but it's also sort of reevaluating and retooling, how we're going to move forward as a community and what types of services we're going to provide and how we're going to provide them, because it's fundamentally changed how we live. So I appreciate that we're working together trying to mitigate any sort of cost increases, property tax increases to our community. But I also want to recognize that it's not going to take 1 year or 2 years to solve what the pandemic has caused. It will take many, many years. And so we don't have to try to solve it all in 1 year, but we do need to make an effort to put forward a plan that gets us to a road of being more fiscally sound and secure. And I think, the discussions that I'm hearing tonight are encouraging. I understand that we have a history that, where we've been making good progress on police and fire pensions, and I applaud that. And I think that if we can continue that, that would be fantastic. So thank you for the discussion. I know we'll continue to have discussion tonight and onward. I just wanted to mention that it will take some time for us to get out of this hole and get out of what the pandemic has caused. And we don't need to solve it all in one day. We will need to solve it over the course of time, and with some good financial planning, that will go a long way.
So based on this conversation, Erica, we've got a couple things that you guys are working on. One is looking at the budget with 500,000 in the reserve instead of in the fund balance instead of $1 million. Looking at the capital projects and doing a budget memo on that so the council can understand that. All right, so those are the two things that I took away from this conversation, but we can still continue the conversation. Alderman Fleming.
I think there was another suggestion about maybe if the bond rating went down, kind of what that meant for cost over time. But one just for clarification, I know that the CIP projects are now at 6.5 million, but if I'm remembering correctly, was that mostly bond or all bonding? So that wouldn't, even if we, cut half those projects, it would not necessarily put more cash in our general fund, right? Those were projects we were talking about bonding next year.
6.5 million is all bonds money, CIP.
Okay, so even if we cut the projects back, we would cut back our debt, but we would not have more cash in hand. Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts or conversation on the budget item? All right, Alderman Ravel.
Well, just to follow up on Alderman Fleming's question. So what is the impact on our cash flow if we cut $1 million out of our capital improvements program? Does that affect our debt payment in 2021 or something? What?
It would affect our debt payment in 2022.
In 2022, okay.
Yeah, so the less we borrow next year, the less we pay back the following year.
Okay. Which is not an insignificant thing, given that we are going to still be in 2022 struggling to regain what we're losing with the pandemic. So
absolutely, which is why we reduced it, the 4.5 million or 3.5 million that we reduced it.
Alderman Sufferton.
Sorry, and this is a question that it's possible nobody knows the answer to. But right now we have unemployment at 8.8%. Historically in Evanston, when was the last time we were anywhere near there? Does anybody know? I know there's people that have been here for a while.
Probably
Anybody
good
remember a time? when-
Question? Could you
Probably
repeat?
during the recession. Tom, you asked about the unemployment rate specifically in Evanston?
Yeah, I mean, as I understand it, it's 8.8. If anybody else has a different number, let me know. I mean, can you remember a time when it's been that high? I mean, that's really what this is. The concern here is there are a lot of people who are in real financial peril right now, and if we can hold off on some things and be as responsible as possible about it, I think it's something that we need to look at. And I don't want to diminish our bond rating or get into having people freak out about asset sales or any of that, but we really have a responsibility to be aware of how financially vulnerable a lot of Evanstonians are in ways that they had no idea they would be, in January of this year. So that's my concern. I just don't know, historically, did we have a time when it was this high in recent memory?
I mean, Alderman Suffolk, I'm looking at our audit report. In 2010, we are reporting 7.9 unemployment rate. And
7.9?
7.9 in 2010.
Okay.
Alderman Suffolk.
Look at our last numbers, we were more like at 13% unemployment.
Oh, it just went down. I can forward. I got something from Paul Zelmazak's office today. I'll forward it to the council with the most recent. But it was 8.8. We had come down. We're lower than the state in Chicago. Alderman Braithwaite.
Just a quick, Alderman Suffolk, you said freak out about asset sales, and I just wanted you to clarify what you meant by that.
I am aware that anything that gets said in a council meeting will freak people out. If you say we need to look at the possibility of asset sales. What I'm saying is we need to have everything on the table that includes what was in the Jones Lang LaSalle report. Now, a lot of those potential assets that would be sold would need to be replaced. So it's not a matter of like an immediate cost savings. But if we're going to have an adult conversation about the city's needs, one of the things we need to talk about is the money has to come from somewhere. So if it's not going to come from property taxes, where else might it come from? And that needs to include just like an honest discussion about potential asset sales, things that are in the Jones Lang LaSalle report. And I just wanted people to know that I'm throwing that out there because, again, we're at the late in the first quarter of this process. And at this point, everything needs to be on the table in an honest and transparent way.
Yep. I would agree with you. So I wouldn't call it freak out. I would actually use the word, I'm not going to put words into your mouth, but I would say the strategic sale of assets that are costing us more than the value of holding on to them. Maybe you would agree with me.
I'll also note that's one of the things that Moody's said could lead to an upgrade in our credit rating would be
So we're up.
If we got rid of our fixed expenses. So that's a trade-off that's possible.
We're on the same page then.
Any other discussion on the budget? All right, then. Well, thank you everyone for a really good conversation this evening about the budget. I think our city staff has several items that they're going to work on and bring back to the next council meeting. We're now going to move to the consent agenda. I know we had committee meetings tonight, so what I'm going to ask is if everyone would take a minute and identify items that they want to have removed or anything that didn't pass committee. I will note, as I noted earlier, that the development at 1621 to 1631 Chicago Avenue did not pass out of committee. So that means items P1, P2, and P3.
That's not correct, Mayor.
Okay.
P3 did not pass. P1 and P2 did pass. However, could you take
okay, so P3 is
off.
Failed in committee. All right. Yeah.
No, it's not held in committee.
No, defeated.
I thought it failed. I said failed in committee. No.
Oh, I thought you said
defeated.
oh, okay. Yes, failed in committee. And then if you could take off P1, I intend to ask to table that so that it runs concurrent with P2, which is just for introduction. So
And
leave P2 on, not P2, leave P2 on and take off P1.
Right,
And
what
then
other
P7. I'm sorry, R7.
And R7 is off, yeah.
R4.
R4 is off, okay. Is there anything in APW?
No.
Okay. All right, so I have 3 items right now. P1, R4, and R7 are off. Okay. Hearing nothing else. Alderman Ruth Simmons, can you move the consent agenda? Again, we don't have to go through each of them, so you're just literally moving it with the exception of the items we just pulled off.
Okay, I will move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. City Clerk, could you please take the roll on the consent agenda, which will include the minutes, everything in APW, planning and development, and what else do we have tonight? The rules committee, and appointments with the exceptions of P1, R4, and R7, which have been removed.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin.
Aye.
Alderman Ravel.
Aye.
Thank you, Clerk. The consent agenda passes the Evanston City Council on a 9-0 vote. We're going to go to the items that were removed. The first one being P1. Alderman Nguyen, could you move that item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move a resolution 87R20 approving a plat of re-subdivision for 1605 to 1631 Chicago Avenue.
Second.
All right, and this is for action. Alderman Wilson.
Thanks. I'd like to move to table this to the next regularly scheduled meeting at the time that we will be entertaining P2. They are integrally related, and because P2 is an introduction item and this is action, I want to just defer this until P2 is up for action as well.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that?
I think the next, is it November 9th? Is that correct?
Yes, and there's no discussion on a tabled item.
Oh, okay. But I have to take a vote. I have to take a vote on it, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, City
I
Clerk.
just straight. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Could you take the roll on tabling P1 to the next City Council meeting?
Yes. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin.
Aye.
And Alderman Ravel.
Aye.
All right. On a 9-0 vote, P1 Resolution 87-R-20 approving a plat of re-subdivision for 1605 to 1631 Chicago Avenue has been tabled this evening until the next meeting to come up at the same time as P2 for action. All right. We're now going to move to the next item that was removed from the agenda, which is R4. Alderman Ruth Simmons, could you move that item?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. R4, Rules Committee recommends City Council adoption of Ordinance 102-020, amending portions of the City Code codifying the Reparations Committees for introduction.
Your second.
Second.
Okay, this is open for conversation, discussion.
Yeah, so when we talked about advancing this as a committee, we had discussion that the appropriate aldermen to represent this committee would be those with the most concentrated Black populations, which is the 5th, the 2nd, and the 8th. And we missed putting it in this language, and I wanted to open up for a discussion or make a recommendation that we specify the ward representation based on our demographics and the leaders on City Council that would be directly serving the most concentrated Black community.
All right, so you're looking to amend this to make note of those 3 wards in here that, okay.
Yes.
Right.
And then additionally, I see that we have the language in here. I believe it's for community members. We should definitely in committee specify the types of background and qualifications or expertise or advocacy or interest that the residents have that are appointed.
Should this go back to rules for this? I mean,
she could probably just amend it, right?
Yeah.
It's just for.
It's for introduction.
Yeah.
There can
So
be
would you make a motion to make those 2 amendments?
So is there any, I'm sorry.
Well, so we get a little more discussion. Alderman Fleming.
I just have a question. Would it make more sense to, instead of listing out the wards, just say ward representation with the highest African American population? Just given, I don't know how long, I mean, probably not right away things are changing, but if this is a long-standing committee and demographics change and ward lines change with census or whatever, so that it's not so limited by number in case the demographics might move somewhere else or change. Or maybe it's not that big of a deal and it just comes back another time, but.
I think, well, I totally see your point, and it's very well taken because of how affordability is changing the neighborhoods. But I do think based on the current demographics and the trajectory and the likelihood of that changing within our program period of 10 years is unlikely. And I do think if that does change, that maybe it could come back to council for consideration.
Okay. Alderman Wilson.
So Alderman Simmons, I might have missed it. Did you make a motion to make those 2 changes?
I would like to make a motion to amend it to make the changes to include the 5th, 2nd, and 8th Ward aldermen to be appointed to the Reparation Committee.
Second.
And I don't know if I need to actually make any type of amendment here, but I think we should think about the criteria and the skill set, expertise of those that are appointed to the committee. So I don't know that that needs to be written in the ordinance or not, but it's something that we would like to at least pass along to the mayor for consideration as those community appointments are being made. And maybe that's the more appropriate way to do it.
yeah. I don't think this work should be done here on the council floor. I think probably at the reparations meeting and then sent back either to the rules or directly to the mayor. Because this is for introduction. We don't normally do this kind of work on an introduction. So that,
I think what Alderman Bruce Simmons is suggesting, and you as well, Alderman Rainey, is a good suggestion that the application that we put together that would solicit community members to serve on the committee would have multiple areas where the subcommittee could say what the desired qualifications are or background or experience is of the community members that would serve on this panel. So I think if we move forward with this ordinance tonight with the modification that's already been moved, that's a great start. And then the subcommittee can continue to discuss what those qualifications would be and then work with the staff to the boards, commissions, and committees to sort of flesh out what that application looks like so that we can get the representation that the subcommittee is looking for.
I'm fine with that. I mean, we've got an amendment. It's a pretty straightforward amendment that Alderman Ruth Simmons has offered. And then the committee can work out the sort of, hey, when you're looking at, applicants, these are the ones we'd like people with certain skill sets or experience. Okay. All right. So we have a amendment to this ordinance to specify wards 5, 2, and 8, that the aldermanic representation be from those wards. It was moved and seconded. Seeing no more discussion on that, City Clerk, could you please take a roll on that amendment?
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin.
Aye.
And Alderman Ravel.
Aye.
All right. So the amendment to add wards 2 and 8 passes 9-0. Seeing no discussion, City Clerk, could you please take the roll on R4 ordinance 102-0 or -0-20, amending portions of the city code, codifying the reparations committee for introduction as amended?
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin.
Aye.
And Alderman Ravel.
Aye.
All right. So R4 passes for introduction on 9-0 vote. Alderman Ruth Simmons, could you move R7?
Yes. R7. At the Rules Committee request, staff has prepared ordinances regarding the compensation for aldermen, 3 ordinances with 3 different models, along with 1 resolution that would accompany 1 ordinance. Staff requests the City Council discuss and adopt one of the following proposals. Option 1, Ordinance 103-020, $59,990 annual compensation with the city to cover insurance costs, or Option 2, Ordinance 106-020, $37,800 annual compensation with the council covering the full cost of insurance, or Option 3, Ordinance 108-020, $15,990 annual compensation to be combined with the health insurance allowance with the council covering the full cost of insurance, and Resolution 94R20, $1,400 monthly allowance. This is for introduction.
Second?
Second.
All right. This is open for discussion. Does anyone need staff to run through the 3 choices here? All right. Alderman Wilson.
Yeah.
So, how about I try to narrow it down to 2, and then we.
Sure.
I would suggest we go with option 3 or 1. To narrow it down.
Now, remind me what page this is on. 400 and I just had it.
98, 498.
Thank you.
I would agree with you, Alderman Wilson, to narrow it down.
I also agree.
Me too.
All right. So it seems like there's a general consensus to narrow it down to option 1 and 3. Alderman Rainey?
When we talked earlier about eliminating the 150 for those employees who opt out of the city insurance, I did some calculations, and I want to tell you how important it is that we allow those employees to continue to receive that $150 a month for opting out of the city insurance. If those of you who receive the city insurance for those of you who have a spouse insured or families, if you all had a spouse who had insurance and you opted out, you would save the city $122,096 a year if you opted out and accepted the $150 a month. The $150 a month for the 6 of you who receive the spouse insurance or family insurance, you would get $10,800 a year as a group. But you would save the city $122,096. That's real money. So let's not take that $150 away from those employees who opt for that insurance. It really is a valuable option to give them.
Thank you, Alderwoman Fleming.
Yeah, 2 things. To speak to Alderman Rainey's point, so I understand that it's an incentive, but I think we're making some assumptions here, which I guess is fine to do, but we're assuming that if we don't give people the $150 a month, they're going to opt into the city insurance, and there's a variety of reasons why people don't opt into the city insurance. Some might be for the $150, some might just be because they don't need the city insurance. So we shouldn't just assume it's not going to save us any money. My other question is for Alderman Wilson. So you propose 1 or 3, and 3 has a couple of different alternatives. Did you have one in mind? So I know where you were thinking with this discussion.
Well, I guess my initial thinking is we have to start somewhere. So I was just trying to get one off the list. So I would have to leave it there and let somebody else throw out the next.
Okay. So Jen Lynn, since you're on the phone and people might not have the packet in front of them at home, can you give us the cost per year for option 1, which is the status quo? And when I mean cost per year, like what do we budget it as? I know we.
I could tell you, $270,960.
And then what is for option 3, just so people have an understanding?
I don't know.
Option 3 has 3 different parts to it.
295,000.
Well, okay, so I will say what it is, and I'm just for that, because again, we're talking about budget, we're talking about, some other cuts we're going to make, and so having the same conversation on this night about what people might assume is an increase for us, I think we need to have the numbers out there. So option 3, according to this memo, is $295,000. If we gave people the allowance of $1,400 a month, if the allowance is $1,800 a month, it's $338,000, and if it's $660 a month, it would be $215,000. So I say that just to help people at home realize it's not that big of a difference in terms of budgeted funds. I would consider the $1,400 or the $1,800 payout, because that would allow people to get family coverage. I think giving people $600 a month and if they can't afford family coverage is not really, I guess it's helpful, but it's not as helpful. And if people are going to take this position and work long hours and all the things that we talk about, if we're going to give them an allowance for insurance, it should at least cover their family if they have a family.
Yep.
Thank you, Alderwoman Fleming, for running through that for everybody. Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Alderman Nguyen was next. I'll go after Alderman Nguyen if that's okay.
Alderman Nguyen, then Ruth Simmons.
Alderman Fleming, thank you for that. I'm not sure I followed all of it. I think I did, but I was studying this afternoon, and I was looking at the three different options for the three different alternatives for option 3. That I'm just going to label them that way. And I wanted to ask Jen a couple questions. So Jen, with the option 3, with the insurance allowance of 16.8, that is for an HMO family coverage?
Correct. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Jennifer Lynn, HR Division Manager. So yes, Alderman, when the option, let's call it 3B, which is the one that's been proposed in the staff memo, that is the equivalent of HMO family coverage. So if anybody were to elect HMO family coverage, that would cover all of it on an annual basis.
So, but let's say some people like, their doctors, and so they would prefer, and they're not in the HMO, so they would prefer to stay in a PPO. They can buy into the PPO. So what is the difference with a PPO family plan? How much would they have to come up with in order to buy that PPO family plan?
So the difference would be approximately $400 a month. So we're giving you $1,400 a month, but then you would have to come up with the additional $400 a month from your paycheck. So you would have a net decrease in wages earned every pay period with that scenario.
Okay, so that's basically what, 4,800 minus 1,400? Am I doing that right? So if you would prefer, or for whatever reason, you need to stick with doctors and whoever is on the next council. All right, I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about next council. Let's say they want a PPO so they can stay with particular doctors. They're going to have to pay $3,400 every year more in order to buy that extra coverage.
But just think of what they're paying now. They're paying for it all.
I would say it's about $400 times 12, so about $4,800.
So it's $5,000 more. Okay.
So the $1,800 is the approximate value of the PPO family coverage. So if you picked option 3C, that would cover all of that. So that's approximately the same as alternative 2, but that the City Council could then amend the resolution every year to accommodate for rising health costs. So your allowance could be different every year based on City Council's decisions.
Right, but my point though is that if we took the one that's recommended by the staff, which is the HMO, there are people who would prefer the PPO, and they would have to pay $5,000 more a year in order to get the PPO.
Correct.
Okay. So I don't think that this, based on that information, I think option 3 is not workable in terms of its fairness. And I would prefer to stay with what we have, which means everyone gets the same salary and everyone has the same choice of insurance benefit. Because I think that if you're someone who just gets elected to the council and for whatever reason you have a couple of kids and somebody needs a particular doctor, the idea that then you have to pay $5,000 more a year in order to get that, I think that's not acceptable to me. So I appreciate the staff coming up with these various alternatives so we can break this out and see this. But I still think that option 1 goes across the board in terms of everyone earns the same salary, everyone has access to whatever insurance they want to choose, no matter what size their family. And then we don't have to also, then the council does not have to go through an annual analysis of how the extra stipend to provide, which I think will get really complicated. And so I think it should, in order to keep this very clean and I support option one.
But we're talking about cutting people out of, taking people's jobs away, and you're talking about giving, premium insurance to aldermen when we could give excellent insurance to aldermen who have families who are paying full price for insurance before they get on the council.
Alderman Rainey, I don't know what people's condition is before they get on the council. I'm looking at how do we keep this level across the council? And I don't know who's going to be on the council next time. So I'm saying that keeping it the simple system that we have now, who knows, the next council, 7 of whoever's on the next council might not take insurance. But I'm saying we don't know that. So
we know that's never happened. We know that's never happened.
But it may never have happened, but we never thought we'd elect Trump. Okay.
Well,
so,
you know what? When people say we're giving aldermen a raise, when they see the number 37,000, they don't know that 6 people on this council are already making in excess of $35,000 a year. We're just like Alderman Wilson said a few weeks ago. This way it's transparent. You know what people are getting.
It may be transparent, Alderman Rainey, but it's not the same system that we've been having. And it doesn't provide people with the same access to insurance. So you're asking
it really does.
You're asking someone who might run for alderman then to pay $5,000 extra for insurance. And whereas we don't know who's going to serve and who will have insurance. It's been different almost every council we've ever been on. So my view is I think that the best option is to remain with option 1, which allows everyone the same salary and allows everyone whatever access they want to the insurance plans that the city offers. And then it takes the next council out of any debate that they're going to run into about what the stipend should be, which I think is going to become a political football every single year. So I think the system that we have now is the one that works best. And many people receive insurance benefits through their jobs, and people can understand that if they want to look at it. I think actually having us, I think trying to attract people to the council, but using this complicated plan is...
It's not complicated.
Well...
And who says you have to buy insurance from the city? You could buy it outside from the city.
You don't. So in option 1, you could do that same thing, and then you could you could use whatever you want for your insurance.
No, you can't. In option 1.
Option one is the status quo. It's what we've got now. So you get your insurance through the city.
You don't have to get your insurance through the city.
Yes, you do. Option 1.
Right. You don't get any kind of compensation if you don't choose through the city. You're paying for it out of pocket or through your spouse's plan.
That's my point. I mean, Alderman Rainey, you could buy whatever kind of insurance you want, or you could take it from the city. But I think that the option 3 with these 3 alternatives it's not the same level playing field that's offered right now.
It is not a level playing field. Trust me. When you Alderman Nguyen are being compensated over $35,000 a year, and some of us are being compensated under $25,000 a year, it is not a level playing field.
Okay, let's go on.
Shame on you.
I mean, I know that's okay. We have disagreements here. Let's see, Alderman Ruth Simmons.
My question, I think it was City Manager Storley or Jen say that insurance is a requirement. Is that accurate? And if so, I thought I heard that said that it's a requirement for staff. And how do we enforce it? Or did I mishear that?
No, you did not mishear. So if you are a full-time employee, you do need to have health insurance, whether it's through the city or through your spouse's plan. You can't not have insurance at all. And that is just for full-time employees. So if you're going to get the waiver, which I should mention, is contractually obligated for all of our union staff because it is negotiated as part of their contract. So if the council were to entertain not giving that $150 a month stipend, it would only apply to non-union employees. Each year, we require our staff who are full-time, who are getting the stipend, to prove that they have active insurance through a spouse's plan. That only applies to our full-time employees.
So
we are far from that.
Okay, so it doesn't, we don't have anything like that. I mean, I have the insurance, so I never had to prove anything, but we don't have anything like that, any sort of mandate.
That does not apply to the alderman.
And just to add, it's not even that the employees have to have insurance, the city has to offer the insurance. So for employees who are working an average of 30 hours or more per week under the Affordable Care Act, the city must offer them insurance.
So that I know. I mean, I understand employer responsibility, but I didn't know that they have to verify their coverage somewhere, or else they're mandated to take our insurance. Either way, I guess that's not the point because it doesn't apply to us. My concern is that I don't want any council people that are maybe lower income and would opt to take the insurance compensation to live instead of be insured. And so just thinking through that out loud, if there were a alderman or mayor elected that had the automatic compensation, let's say they qualified for they would be low income and they would qualify for some type of state insurance or other type of subsidized insurance or Obamacare or something along those lines, like that would be an option to them as well, and take the monthly allowance that would otherwise be designated for insurance.
Under option 3, they could do that.
Right.
Yes, under option 3, an elected official could take the allowance and use it as they see fit.
Okay.
And so they could even choose not to be insured if they wanted to.
Okay. So I hope that everyone, wherever this lands, I hope everyone is insured. I know that it's been life-saving for me to have insurance with chronic illness, but I do really understand and agree with Alderman Rainey's point in the fairness in compensation. So I would like us to explore option 3 more on the allowances. So I think Alderman Fleming, did I hear you maybe have interest in one of the 3 supplemental allowances in addition to the 15.9 compensation package?
Well, option 3 alternative, I guess A, made more sense for the reasons for me for what Alderman Nguyen put forward. I don't want to have someone taking the position and then still have to pay out of pocket, $400. So option 3A, I think, is the one that gives the PPO coverage if people wanted that. But if we look at it in comparison, even just the total cost to the city with status quo, they're really the same. I think it's $1,000 cheaper. I realize this is based on some assumptions of who takes the insurance, but the overall budget amount is the same between status quo and alternative A, according to this chart that the staff gave us.
Right. So looking at the chart, one of the option 3s is within the same overall cost to the city as the option A status quo.
Yes.
And which one exactly is comparable in terms of overall cost of the city?
I think that's the one with the PPO option. I have to go back to the other.
It's the one that's labeled alternate A.
Yeah, so it's the one that alternate A. So the stipend is $1,800 a month, which would cover the PPO coverage, which is what Alderman Nguyen was talking about earlier.
Right.
The alternate A is actually the $660. So y'all are probably talking about alternate C, which is the $1,800 per month allowance.
Oh, it's listed on the memo as alternate A is listed as $1,800 a month allowance.
On 496, page 496. I think it's in.
There's a discrepancy between the memo and the chart.
Right.
Oh,
But I did just want to mention that the status quo option, what's listed in the chart at the 339 is the maximum if every council member took the highest one. Our current cost of status quo is 280. So it's.
No, I get that, but I would assume you set aside every 4 years because you don't know what people are going to do in terms of their insurance. I would assume in our budgeting, we would be ready to pay 339 if everyone on council took PPO insurance.
Sure.
Right.
So that's where I get that from. Like I said, the numbers are going to fluctuate based on who's taking what. But so alternate A in the memo, I'm sorry, in the chart, is that the right number?
No, apparently it's not.
Okay, so
Maybe let's just focus on we'll call it the low, medium, and high. So the low alternate is the $660 a month. The medium alternate is the $1,400 a month, and then the high alternate is the $1,800 a month.
But I think the bigger question is which document should we be looking at? That's where I'm a little bit confused. Are we looking at the document 496 or the document and chart on 498?
Let's all look at 496 just to pick one, and we're all on the same page. Literally.
Okay.
496 provides all the right information.
Okay. Thank you.
Fine. Yeah.
So even 496, the alternate A is listed here on 496 at $338,000 a year would be the budgeted amount. And the
Right.
status quo is
339,805.
339,805.
So Alderman Fleming, I do think that it's either alternate A or option one are to me, provide the best alternatives. I mean, I don't want to use alternative again, the best choices. So I am open to either one of those.
Well, as we have this discussion, I'm most thinking of the residents that are underrepresented and would struggle to maintain just livability, affordability with this package and also get insurance. But I'm hearing that the allowance would be available to use as it's not going to be regulated. So it's not a reimbursable, it's not a mandate that it is, that they take our insurance or any particular insurance. We also don't mandate that they're insured, but they would have some options if they are actually lower income families. So with that, I would hope that we continue in the same vein of having more transparency, as Alderman Wilson said a couple weeks ago, and having more equality in pay.
All right, all right, Alderman Wilson.
So I would move that we choose option 3, alternate A, which is the PPO level, and proceed accordingly with that resolution.
And the PPO level being the 1,800
Correct.
month? Okay. Is there a second? There's a second to that. Okay. Any discussion? Alderman Revelle?
Well, I do just want to point out that, so hard to label these properly. The status quo, budgeted at $37,800 for the city, in actual expenses is somewhat less. I don't know how. Whereas alternative A, because it's going to be automatically paying a stipend to every alderman, whether they choose to use it for insurance or not, is going to guarantee that the actual expense is what's in the budget. So I'm just saying, I'm a no vote on alternate A. So here we go.
So I wish that there was some way we could, like staff, is it because of the type of employee we are that we can't have some regulation or requirement of insurance, even if it is state insurance or Obamacare or whatever, so that we're sure our elected body has proper health care? Because I don't want to get too far away from where this full compensation package, what it's really intended for.
So you're elected officials, so the city cannot mandate anything from you.
Okay. And so then the difference in the way it's in option 2, where it's just a 37.8 annual compensation, and then if we were to go with one of the option 3s, is it paid out the same, or would it then be a whatever 1599 plus $1,800 a month? Is that would be a total compensation package?
It would be. It would just be paid to you a little differently because it would be paid on a monthly basis versus a biweekly basis. But gross wages would be the same.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Rainey?
But the advantage of buying the insurance would be that amount you paid for insurance would be tax deductible, or would not be taxed, correct?
Correct. It would reduce your taxable income,
Right,
yes.
right.
That's only if we buy it at the city. So if it was to be, if the alderman was to buy it someplace else, then it would be completely taxable.
Correct.
So that would be the advantage of buying it from the city.
Right.
All right, any more discussion on Alderman Wilson's motion to move option 3, with the allowance of $1,800 per month? Alderman Fleming?
I just have a quick question. Erica, you mentioned earlier, and again, this is all flexible, but right now we're at 228. What was the amount you said we're at right now for salary budgeting?
279,000.
Okay, but when we go into, I looked at the budget calendar, looked at the budget for council. When we go into the new council cycle, where would we get the money? Because again, can't remember what's in the budget. If we made this increase, is it already there, Jen Lynn? Do you budget for everyone taking the highest insurance just to make sure we have the funds?
It is not currently budgeted at this higher amount. Next time we have a city council meeting, we would have to pull up the budget balancing worksheet and determine how we would fund the extra cost of the alternate option. I did also want to note that the concern that Alderman Rusimmons shared, which was if we go with anything other than the status quo, there is no mandate that the money is used to purchase insurance. So it may be challenging for some people to determine that they should take that money and spend it on insurance when they may need it for other things. Mm-hmm. And so, in a sense, we're creating a policy for people to take insurance, which they may not actually use for insurance. So that's just a built-in caveat.
So going with the $1,800, it's the same as the $37,590 in compensation annually. So it's the same as the option 2.
Yeah.
It's just
correct. Option 2 and option 3 are the same. It's just that there may be a built-in.
So is there no way, Jen, and this is a question for Jen, and I think you answered it, but I'm asking you to really exhaust all options. There's no way to require or verify that our council is insured?
Not from the city's perspective. Now, if you wanted to, in your ordinances, you could force the health insurance allowance, the $1,800 a month, to be spent on insurance, whether that's insurance outside the city or inside the city. So you could dictate that so that there is some proof that the $1,800 a month in insurance allowance is being spent in whole or in part on health insurance and not something else.
So any balance could come back if so. I mean, I think that's saying the same thing. If we require them to spend the allowance on insurance, but any balance goes back to the alderman, is that accurate? Or
I would say that the balance would remain with the alderman because we can't force someone like Alderman Rainey to go purchase family coverage when she doesn't have family coverage. So as long as she's spending some of that money on covering herself, then that should suffice, and the rest of it she would be able to keep.
I just had a $48,000 hospital bill. I will definitely be buying insurance.
Right, but I like if there is a way to have a some kind of requirement that insurance is, secured with some part of that allowance, and any balance goes back to the alderman. I don't know. Is there anyone want to discuss that more or no?
No.
I think responsible adults are going to buy insurance. I got a question.
Well, lower income adults make sacrifices that, make them vulnerable. So that's something that I'm trying to protect the elected body from.
All right.
Alderman Rainey.
Okay, I want to be clear. The status quo is 339,000, right?
Right now.
Right now. And the alternate A is 338,000 right now, right?
Let me just clarify. Status quo is not 337. Status quo is 337, assuming that all of y'all have elected PPO family coverage. But because not all of you have elected PPO family coverage, and there's one of you who has decided to opt out altogether, the actual cost is 279.
No, but I'm saying for 2021, if we all did, if the new council did, would be something around 339, right?
Correct. It would be about the same as the alternate B and alternate A under option 3.
Right. That's what I mean. So if we don't have the money in the budget now for alternate A, we also don't have the money in the budget now for status quo, right? So, I mean,
We budget based on an average of the last 10 years. So
Yeah.
looking at present and previous council members and what their elections were, we averaged that. We haven't had in decades where every alderman has taken full family coverage. So
Yeah.
we don't budget for that scenario.
okay. Got it. All right.
All right. Alderman Nguyen.
Okay, just briefly, I just want to make sure I have this right. So option 1, status quo, will at the most would cost the city $340 approximately, but could vary every year. Whereas option 3, alternate A, will always cost the city about $340. Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
All right. Any more discussion? All right. Seeing none, Alderman Wilson moved a motion that was seconded to go with option 3, ordinance 108-0-20, which is $15,990 of annual compensation to be combined with a health insurance allowance, with the council covering the full cost of insurance in this scenario that was moved, which would be the $1,800 a month allowance. All right. So seeing no discussion, City Clerk, could you please take the roll on that motion?
Yes. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
No.
Alderman Fisk.
No.
Alderman Braithwaite.
I think aye.
Alderman Nguyen,
No.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons, Aye.
Alderman Suffredin,
No. Alderman Ravel.
No.
All right. The motion failed on a 4-5 vote for option 3.
Now what's next?
Failed to pass 4-5. So what I would suggest is if someone wants to make a motion on another item here, Alderman Nguyen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move option 1, status quo.
Second.
Okay. All right. Seeing no discussion, City Clerk, could you take the roll on option 1, ordinance 103-0-20, which is $15,990 annual compensation with the city to cover insurance costs.
Alderman Rainey,
No.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
No.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
No.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
No.
Alderman Suffredin. And Alderman Rebel.
Aye.
All right, so option one, which is the status quo, passes the Evanston City Council on a 5-4 vote. All right. Thank you, everyone, for that lengthy discussion.
This is for introduction, right?
Excuse me. This is for introduction. Thank you. This is for introduction only. So option one passed 5-4 for introduction. Thank you. We're now going to move to call of the wards. Alderman, who did I start with tonight? I said it at the beginning. Rainey?
Yep.
I couldn't be more disappointed in that last vote for introduction. This council has refused to acknowledge that people making almost $38,000 a year are making so much more than those of us who are not married and do not have children are making. And it's just so wrong and so unfair. We had an opportunity tonight, and I'm going to bring it up again at our next council meeting when this is up for a final vote, that you rethink what you did tonight. I know those of you who are making $36,000 and $38,000 a year want to hang on to the status quo, but it's not fair. It's not fair. You have to think about those people who are going to be elected next time, and those of us who have served so long and have always been shortchanged. It's not fair. And for the press to report that people are getting a raise to $37,000, you all are already making more than $37,000. So it's just not right, especially when you hypocritically argue that we're all about equity and equality and equal pay for equal work. We're not. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Fleming?
No report.
Alderman Fisk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to remind everyone, there's a joint first and fourth ward meeting tomorrow dealing with the budget at 7 p.m. So please attend. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Alderman Braithwaite?
No report.
Okay, Alderman Nguyen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank all of the Third Ward residents who came out for our Zoom meeting or stayed home for our Zoom meeting. I recognize that they chose their Third Ward town hall over a presidential debate, and I really appreciate all of those who decided to stick with logical, thoughtful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson?
Thank you. As Alderman Fisk mentioned, we've got that joint meeting tomorrow night. Also, the music world and my neighborhood lost not just a bass player, but a neighbor, Pierre Kesdy, who was in the band Naked Ray Gun for many, many, many years, passed away earlier this month. And we as his neighbors will miss him, and our thoughts go out to his family. It was, so, in any event, a sad note.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Ruth Simmons?
No report.
Alderman Suffredin?
Yeah, nobody's hyping the joint 2nd Ward, 5th Ward, 6th Ward meeting on November 11th at 7 p.m. on Veterans Day evening. So I will.
Thank you, Alderman Suffredin. We'll meet again before then.
I think so, maybe even once or twice.
Right.
A couple of newsletters may go out, Facebook posts. Don't worry.
We like that kind of enthusiasm.
Yes.
All right. Alderman Ravel.
Just a reminder that of this joint 7th, 8th ward meeting on Thursday to talk about the budget starting at 7 p.m. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Do we have executive session?
It's my understanding that we do not have executive session this evening.
You want to have it?
On there. So,
No.
so we do not. So I'm going to ask if there's a motion to adjourn.
Second.
City Clerk, could you take the roll to adjourn?
Yes. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Fleming.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin.
Aye.
And Alderman Ravel.
Aye.
You skipped me, but
Oh, I'm
aye.
sorry. Alderman Wilson. Yeah,
That's
we'll let everyone get out of here.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Clerk. On a 9-0 vote, the Evanston City Council meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you for the council members for a good discussion tonight.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.